Knock knock, the sound of knocking echoed from the fine steel iron door, and Karon could recognize the visitor just by the rhythm. He impatiently opened his eyes, blowing out fiery sparks from his nostrils. "Hughes, why are you here again? Are you very free?" Hughes wore a smile, as the mage enjoyed seeing the red dragon's irritable demeanor. It appeared more authentic. "Things are settled. Oh, by the way, I came this time merely to bring this to you." The mage handed a thick book to the red dragon, who gazed over. On the hard-covered book pages were written several common words, the 360 techniques of magic elements control. Sigh, 2 heavy sparks sprayed from Karon's nostrils as he mumbled, "I am a red dragon, I prefer using my flesh and strength to destroy enemies." Despite saying this, Karon earnestly accepted the book. Possessing more knowledge reserves isn't a bad thing. The more you understand, the more it aids in engaging with the real world. Remember to finish this book quickly, I've placed a magic spell on it. If the time exceeds, it'll just go puff and turn to ashes. Hugh's smiling eyes bore an uncanny resemblance to the old mage Lapus but gave off a different perception. The young mage in front sported a smirk that seemed to hide swords, at least according to the red dragon. "In the coming time, I'll be very busy, probably won't have time to visit you, Karon." Hughes intentionally paused, awaiting the red dragon's response. Karon indeed was delighted, even his agitated mood improved. "That's good, you're a noble mage, you shouldn't always come to this filthy gladiatorial arena." "Heh." Hughes' face revealed a just as expected expression. He spoke slowly, "But you don't need to worry about your learning progress. I'll let the attendant puppets bring the books you need to study." I still have several boxes of notes left over from my apprenticeship days, and I'll have the attendants bring them over to you as well." Upon hearing this, Karon's expression changed. While he deliberately utilized his sub-brain cluster to record the knowledge from these books and keep them accessible in the sub-brain. Magic knowledge requires thorough personal understanding and comprehension. If Karon can't understand this knowledge himself, then his sub-brain is merely a library. But recently, the sub-brain is overloaded with data on magic knowledge, and every day Karon spends extensive time studying and contemplating. At present, his mind is tangled with those indescribable magic runes. Yet he cannot and would not refuse such an opportunity, even if it's hard to digest. He must cram it into his mind. Previously, being lazy like the giant dragon was a habit, but it's just learning, after all. So the red dragon sighed, "All right, I'll give my best." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 57-15, Guardians. Chapter 57, Chapter 15, Guardians. Akais and Gomot lay in the paradise where once the juvenile dragons rested, chewing on fruits with their mouths. Thanks to the nourishment from abundant water and the exposure to sunlight, these diverse fruits are full of sugar and juice, which are now the 2 dragons' favorite dessert after meals. The 2 dragons each lay under their favorite fruit tree. If they wanted to eat fruit, they would shake the tree with their long and powerful tails and then wait with their mouths open for the falling fruits to drop into their mouths. This method is actually inefficient, but it aligns perfectly with the lazy nature of these giant dragons. In recent times, the body of white dragon Gomot has grown significantly. With a sufficient supply of food, his body length has reached over 5 meters, although his broken tail has never regrown. His entire body is covered with fine white scales, which have acquired many scratches, and there's an unhealed scar on his cheek that grows white spines, making him look like a qualified warrior. Blue Dragon Axi is the same, his body has many more scars, with blue scales showing signs of wear everywhere. However, the young blue dragon is much stronger than the white dragon, so he has fewer scars. During this period, without the aura of Carlet's deterrence and the patrol of the dragon group, even with the presence of young Dragon Axi, the Dragon Nest territory welcomed many monsters and magical beasts that were spying and attacking. No one would refuse to have more fertile territory, and 1 young dragon plus 1 juvenile dragon are not qualified to walk freely in this vast wilderness. Even the former Carlet just shrank within the territory, having no thoughts of expansion. Meanwhile, Gomot rapidly grew in continuous battles, and with the help of Axi, the centaur tribe, and ogre slave warriors, he repelled many spying monsters and successfully defended the former Dragon Nest mountain range. However, since the dragon group's territory is now composed of the original territory plus the territories of the centaur tribe and the ogre tribe, it has far exceeded the management limits of the two dragons. Therefore, Gomot and Axi had to abandon part of the territory and shift to a full contraction state. Even so, the enlarged territory area still left the two dragons somewhat overwhelmed, and the declining ogre tribe was also coveted. As for that slave giant demon, neither Gomot nor Axi trusted her. The sweet juice of the fruit exploded in the white dragon's mouth, and Gomot was so intoxicated by the sweet taste that he wagged his tail, shaking his head. Suddenly, a green light shadow flashed through the forest, and the white dragon's excellent dynamic vision captured the shape of this light shadow, and he immediately called out, "Riven!" Gomot and Axi sat crouched, looking at the pick elf holding a piece of red scale in her hand. It carried Karon's scent. It's a scale the red dragon voluntarily shed, serving as a token for Riven to gain the trust of Gomot and Axi. In fact, Riven didn't need to bring the red dragon's scale, even though the other juvenile dragons didn't think much of the little elf. But she is Karon's friend, and Karon's friends are the friends of the dragon group, that's White Dragon's thought. Is this Karon's idea, letting us give up the dragon group's territory, not only to protect those humans who come from being disturbed and threatened by those monsters but also to help them develop here? Blue Dragon Axi clearly had some doubts about the pick elf's words, perhaps unwilling to believe them. Dragons are greedy creatures, and in these days, just the precious gemstones those canine beloved dug out of the veins could randomly cover the floor of Axi's former cave. Now not only does he have to give these things away, but he also has to hand over the territory of the dragon group to those humans, something Axi cannot tolerate. It's not like that. Riven flapped her almost transparent wings, hovering before the white dragon. Karon said it's just to temporarily make room for these humans to develop. And it's only to give up the ogre's territory, don't disturb these humans in other places. This is also useful for building the dragon group's territory. White Dragon Gomot nodded, that does sound like something Karon would say. I believe you, Riven. By the way, Karon also said to pay attention to those humans, especially if they are craftsmen or people who understand construction and various technologies. Once they arrive in the dragon group's territory, don't let them leave again, these people are very useful. The pick elf hurriedly added. Got it, White Dragon nodded. He actually expressed words of thanks to the little elf, extending his claw to pluck his favorite orange from the tree and give it to the little elf. Thank you, Riven. Without you, I wouldn't have known Karon's situation. We are friends, Gomot, the little elf Riven said with particular satisfaction, patting her chest, then embraced the plump fruit, preparing to leave. She bid farewell to Gomot and Axi. I have to go now, to tell Karon this good news. The mage helped set up a magic teleportation gate which has a time limit. I have to hurry back. Blue Dragon watched the disappearing figure of the little elf flickering through the forest, then turned to look at the white dragon. Do we really have to do as she said, give all these things to those humans? Maybe we can find a better way to save Karon and them. Blue Dragon was clearly still being dominated by his own greed. He was reluctant to part with those rich veins and resources on this land. White Dragon stood up, his gradually growing body gradually revealed a spirit of vigor, and the densely packed fine scratches all over his body conveyed the white dragon's growth. He glanced at the blue dragon discontentedly, then said sternly, Akais, don't be so short-sighted, the territory exists for the dragon group. As long as Karon and the others can return from the human empire as soon as possible, I'm willing to give up everything. Are you really reluctant to part with this bit of land? As long as Karon and the others can come back, we can conquer more territories and possess much more fertile and vast land. The strength of the dragon group is far greater than that of us two dragons. White Dragon, now much more mature than the young dragon, suddenly showed a smile on his cheek covered with white spines, teasing the young blue dragon. "Akais, don't let Karon know you are so short-sighted, otherwise he will scold you as an idiot whose head has been clamped by his own butt, and you know Karon scolds people very rudely, you wouldn't want to have him pointing at your nose and scolding you all day long, right?" "Whew," Blue Dragon exhaled, a thin streak of lightning flashed through the air, he saw the shadow of the red dragon from the white dragon, that was the look of a king belonging to the dragon group. He nodded, "You're right, Gomot, I will do my utmost to assist you, just so that Karon and the others can return to this land as soon as possible." White Dragon looked up at the sun directly overhead, the dazzling sunlight couldn't block the gleam in the White Dragon's eyes, he said with determination, "I will also guard this land until Karon returns." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 58-16, Land of Golden. Chapter 58, Chapter 16, Land of Golden. No one knows when it started, but a rumor began circulating among the Gata Empire's common folk that those juvenile dragons captured and turned into Imperial Colosseum gladiators possessed the world's most fertile territories. There, Rhine forests flourished, and the centuries-old trees alone could build a small boat, the land was fertile, and crops planted there could be harvested 4 or 5 times a year. The area was rich in species, and even the lowest skilled hunters could catch plump game with simple traps or fish with nothing but their hands from those stupid fat fish. Its mineral veins were endless, with countless precious minerals exposed on the surface, and gold mines and silver mines scattered everywhere, gemstones and agate were easily obtainable. Even the rivers flowing through the jungles were filled with gold. By collecting the waters downstream from the land of Golden, you could obtain boundless amounts of gold. Although this rumor sounded too good to be true, those who had witnessed the juvenile dragon's appearance at the Imperial Colosseum inexplicably fueled these rumors. Each spoke as though he had personally experienced such distant lands, with great conviction. These rumors were said to have originated from those adventurers, who daily extolled their adventures in bustling marketplaces. And how they explored the land of Golden and luckily found a piece of dog-head gold the size of a human head near the rivers. Initially skeptical about these rumors, genuine adventurers began to stir upon seeing the massive dog-head gold displayed before them, while the increasing number of boats in the harbored cities near the sea further verified their thoughts. These boats were filled with people and various equipment for mineral washing, lively and jovial aboard, and after receiving ample supplies at the harbors, circled them a few times declaring their inner joy, then set off toward the legendary juvenile dragon's territory. These adventurers immediately became exuberant, quickly spreading the word, linking up with each other, preparing to form an adventurer alliance to head to that affluent place. In this way, not only could they gather everyone's strength for self-protection, but maybe they could also occupy a bountiful area as a base. As for those merchants and adventurers who had previously visited that area, they thought perhaps their exploration direction was mistaken or not deep enough. After all, they had also seen the area firsthand, so they couldn't sit still and began organizing their forces, preparing to head to the land of Golden. Powerful merchants started assembling their fleets, recruiting mercenaries and explorers from the market as guards, with ships following the paths of the scouts setting off far away. And some scattered gold-seeking adventurers rented those relatively cheap small and medium-sized ships, following the large boats of the merchants. Though these small and medium-sized ships were risky to sail upon the sea, the adventurers didn't care, their desire for gold surpassing their value for life, being people who traded life for wealth in the first place. Gold seekers didn't understand life less than adventurers did. Wherever there might be gold, they'd attempt to try, regardless of whether the place was heaven or hell. The citizens of the Northern Gata Empire originally had a strong passion for martial arts, full of martial virtues, facing those dangerous monster mountains, always circulating tales of hidden treasures. Therefore, the whole country had a dense adventuring spirit and atmosphere, which further stimulated the populace's enthusiasm. As this trend spread, it gradually passed from coastal cities to inland cities, even affecting imperial capital Hobbies at the empire's southern center. This adventure gold-seeking fever seemed led by a mysterious hand, slowly sweeping across the entire Gata Empire, becoming nationwide popular within a few months, as countless adventurers and merchants began heading north. When those ships were heading north with noble family crests and mage emblems, even the ordinary people living amongst the marketplace became eager. For a moment, imperial ships became scarce, with even reckless adventurers attempting to sail out the sea with fishing boats, only to be capsized by waves shortly after leaving shore, fortunately close enough to retrieve their lives. Nut honey cakes, pumpkin soup. Come see, tastes great. Fresh wheat bread, only 2 copper. Arugula, carrots, chives. The crowded market was filled with various hawking sounds of soliciting customers, people coming and going, with not only many farmers and city residents but also occasionally some nobility servants appearing in this place. Selective nobility often had peculiar tastes, maybe one day they might want to try the flavors of ordinary people's food. In front of this crowded market were some mobile stalls, those being the first choice for people who lacked the ability to open a small restaurant but were confident in their culinary skills. Rose was one of them, although he hadn't opened today. Rose scratched his head, feeling somewhat embarrassed to shout for customers like others, just standing dumbfounded behind the stall. Your eyes stared intently at the passing pedestrians, hoping they have a keen eye to appreciate your excellent culinary skills and the fruits of your hard labor. Rose, Rose, a young man squeezed through the crowd, drenched in sweat, breathlessly ran to the stall. This was his close friend, Her. Many food materials on his stall came from this companion, as he was an outstanding hunter with smooth processing techniques for the game, with the valuable furs of the game requiring an excellent hand to ensure their worth. What's up, Her? Rose chuckled, handing over a cup of water. Did something happen? Don't worry, tell me slowly. Hey, the young man named Her took 2 deep breaths, gulped down the cup of water, then approached with a mysterious look and said, Rose, do you know the recent rumors about the land of Golden? Of course I know, it's spread throughout the entire capital city. Rose scratched his head. You're not thinking of adventure gold seeking as well, are you, Her? Dismiss that thought, we know nothing about this field. Moreover, even if it truly is covered with gold, we can't find a ship to take us now, as those capable of long journeys have been rented by others. Obviously not for gold seeking, it may not be as those bragging adventurers say. But so many people went to that place, they'd surely need to eat, right? How about we go there and open a small restaurant, while they mine gold, we'll mine them, what do you think? Her proposed, placing a hand on his partner's shoulder. Sounds good. Rose's honest face showed a trace of interest, but how will we get there? As for that, I have a solution. Source, webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 59-17, The King's Relic. Chapter 59, Chapter 17, The King's Relic. When Rose and Her emerged from the crowded cabin onto the land of Golden, months had passed, and this simple gulf once belonging to the ogre tribe had now transformed into something entirely different. Natural Harbor was almost filled with ships, with merchant vessels being loaded, and due to a shortage of labor for moving goods, even some privately armed forces with family crests on their leather armor joined in the effort. Bundles of exquisite beast hides were casually tossed onto the decks of the merchant ships, then carried into the cabins by the ship workers. Crates of agate, conch, gemstones, resources once monopolized by the ogres and unable to be used were gathered and sent onto the ships. And those rare minerals like gold, silver mine, refined gold, cold iron, mithril, etc., still needed workshops set up on site, to undergo simple smelting and processing before being loaded onto merchant ships and sent to the Imperial. Rose could even see plumes of thick smoke rising from the dense forest in the distance, unaware that those were the locations of the smelting workshops. The endless forest, with its tall trees, was an inexhaustible supply of building materials, with log cabins constructed from sturdy logs lining the land of the gulf. Even the forest near the gulf was cleared to create a vast open space. The outermost perimeter was merely guarded with rows of sharpened wooden stakes as simple defensive measures, as this camp needed to expand periodically. Large logs were simply stacked to form watchtower stations around the camp, with sentinels in leather armor wielding long bows standing guard. These were the elites of the nobility. But there were no fixed patrol sentinels, as those adventurers roaming back and forth through the woods were the outermost patrol. They formed groups exploring the forest. Should any unexpected situation arise, they would shoot the whistle arrow as a warning, allowing time for the people in the camp to respond. At this moment, there weren't many people left in the camp compared to the total, yet it was still lively. Those returning adventurers who had gleaned profits mingled with merchant-hired guards, chatting and laughing. Boasting about how much bounty they procured today, this scene evoked a sense of being back in the Gata Empire for the two young ones. It was already noon by now, and wisps of smoke began rising from the densely packed camp cabins, and Rose noted many women wandering in the homes from which smoke emerged. Adventurers never took women with them during expeditions unless they were adventurers too, thus these women ought to be transient prostitutes. Because the dwellings of those nobility and mages lay in the camp's center, though made of simple logs, these houses appeared distinctively refined and imposing. One could say, when it comes to the scent of gold coins, these women were as astute as the adventurers. "Hey, two foolish newcomers, why are you standing here in a daze? Follow me, you've got to obey the rules upon coming here. I'll explain the rules of this place properly to you, only costs 5 coppers. An old man approached them. Those merchants had specific teams for reception, he couldn't get in, so he aimed for these two young ones that looked rather naive. Rose and he exchanged a glance and trailed after the old man. After all, they were unfamiliar with this place, grasping more information was beneficial, and 5 coppers was a barely acceptable price for them. That is where the mage lords and nobility lords reside, do not casually bother them just on any day, or you'll risk being caught by those guards and forced into labor. The camp desperately lacks people now. After accepting 5 coppers, the old man dutifully led them to register at the camp while explaining the camp's situation to the bewildered young pair. And remember, when registering later, you need to write down your skilled craft and your purpose here. Tax and security payments have to be submitted each month at a proper ratio if you intend to keep living here. Rose scratched his head, but we just arrived, we don't have any money for taxes and security fees, can we owe it first? Hee, the old man laughed, displaying his mouth missing several teeth. The place is short on people everywhere now, even if you know nothing, having the strength will earn you money. Those merchants and nobility are throwing around funds eagerly yet still need people. But if you plan on doing things on your own, delayed tax and security payments will increase proportionately. Better quickly make some money, or else be driven out to survive on your own in the forest. Also, it's best not to provoke the nearby centaur and kobold, green goblins entities, those are. Dragon, that's a white dragon, a white giant dragon soared through the camp's skies, with wings measuring up to 11 meters long casting a shadow over everyone's heads in sunlight. A blue dragon, larger in size, followed the white dragon like a loyal guard alongside, its scales glistening bright blue like the color of the sea. The streamlined, robust muscles, solid dragon scales, and hefty dragon claw gleaming under sunlight attracted the unworldly youths. Rose and he widened their eyes, gazing up in awe. Tisk tisk, the old man shook his head, having grown accustomed to those startled stares of newly arrived to this place. He waited quietly for the giant dragon to pass and sink into the endless tall forest. Then he addressed the two young ones who had come back to their senses. That is the dragon ruling this land. Though still a juvenile dragon, it commands many clans of creatures as its beloved. Even the powerful blue dragon is willing to obey its orders. My advice for you is not to easily provoke the dragon's beloved, that is the essential law for surviving here. The old man wasn't sure when the nobility and mages formed an agreement with the dragon ruling this terra, but everyone at the camp knew that the Dragon's clan would dispatch members monthly to gather their due share of revenue from this camp, including simple forged weapons and iron arrows, and various refined minerals. Surprisingly, these dragon beloved were uninterested in treasures. They viewed the crates of gemstones and gold coins with indifference, which shattered many stereotyped notions about dragons. Yet, there were avaricious adventurers who wished to seek the dragon treasure. A mere juvenile dragon and young dragon couldn't stop them. Yet, inevitably they were discovered by goblins and kobolds inhabiting the woods surrounding the dragon nest. Soon, centaur warriors equipped with refined ironware would rush out, slaughtering these foolish and greedy adventurers and hang them on the forest stakes. Perhaps some lucky adventurers would reach the vicinity of the Dragon Nest mountain range. Nonetheless, frozen sculptures and clusters reeking of ozone-marked charcoal revealed their reckless fate. The two young ones nodded solemnly, considering it fairly worth the 5 coppers spent, though he was suddenly struck by curiosity. He asked, "The white dragon is so formidable, surely it has an impressive name." The old man shook his head, murmuring, blowing through his gap-toothed mouth, "Who knows, I wouldn't dare ask, but as the king ruling this land, everyone at the camp calls it the White King." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 60-18, Somber Dragon Fire. Chapter 60, Chapter 18, Somber Dragon Fire. On top of the White Tower, 2 great mages sat opposite each other, quietly watching the grand and resplendent imperial palace outside the floor-to-ceiling window, their eyes viewing it as if it were just grey tiles and gravel, scrutinizing and indifferent. "La Puz, have you really made up your mind? Is this the path you've chosen?" The black-haired old man with the exclusive emblem of the royal mages pondered for a long while before speaking. The white-haired mage, La Puz, turned his head. Facing the elderly mage, also a holy sanctuary grand master, his expression was no longer so relaxed. "I've found the singularity of destiny. Although I can't observe its trajectory, I can observe the destinies of those influenced by it. Some lives, which should have long fallen to dust, have changed because of it. I believe my path to legend lies within." The black-haired mage sighed, "I've maintained a friendship with the Carol clan for many years, and there's always a bit of reluctance." La Puz said indifferently, "If His Majesty the Emperor could peacefully be just an emperor, why would so many be dissatisfied with him? No one wants to follow him into the depths of hell, Ephorus. You shouldn't hesitate any longer. Once I step onto the path of legends, everything here will need to be led by you. Such a mindset isn't suitable for a leader." Ephorus sighed and suddenly said, "You interfered with that dragon's trajectory. Be careful, he'll seek revenge when he finds out later." The white-haired old mage, La Puz, squinted his eyes and smiled, "Although I made him suffer a little loss, I also gave him a huge advantage. He shouldn't be that petty." The old mage frowned as he said this, as the response from Destiny's singularity flashed fragmented, blurred, and chaotic images through his mind suddenly. "Hard to say. Your lineage isn't known for having broad minds," Ephorus, who understood the character of his seemingly smiley old friend across from him, asked, "When will you act?" "Soon. When His Majesty the Emperor is about ready, we will give him a reason to initiate a war, a reason he cannot ignore. Let's calmly await the Emperor's moves," La Puz said with a smile on his face, yet his eyes were calm, and he lightly tapped his fingers on the table. Boom! Karon effortlessly knocked over his opponent holding a heavy shield. The over 2-meter-tall barbarian, along with his heavy shield, was lifted by the red dragon's horn, the sharp and sturdy horn piercing him directly. Then, using the horn, he sliced the barbarian's body in half, with blood trickling and entrails gushing out, landing on the red dragon's head and neck. However, the smooth scales of the red dragon's body and a thin layer of elemental protection prevented any of it from adhering. With a thud, the barbarian's broken body fell like a ragged sack, sticking to the dry, solid ground. The other barbarian warriors immediately grew more cautious. They knew that the strength of one person was insufficient to counter the red dragon before them, so they called out to form a battle formation. The foremost barbarians slammed their heavy shield sheathed in thick iron into the ground, their sturdy bodies leaning into the shield as they advanced slowly. The second row of barbarians then thrust long iron spears and sabers through the gaps between several heavy shields, while other barbarian warriors chose the more handy war axes, following the barbarians in the front to launch an offensive against the red dragon. At this time, Karon's body had reached 9 meters in length. Although a bit thin, he was full of deterrence, especially with the rational spiritual light in his eyes and the fury hidden beneath his indifference, which filled the barbarian warriors with awe. The red dragon looked at the approaching battle formation, and the sub-brain cluster connected to his brain was operating frantically. Under Karon's will, the knowledge and memories contained within the dragon race's legacy and scattered in the depths of his mind were retrieved by the sub-brain cluster. The overlooked or forgotten knowledge and memories turned into orderly information, flowing back into Karon's mind, enabling him to understand much about his opponents before him. The barbarians, those brave and fierce warriors that appear both in the frozen northern wilderness and the hellish southern Rhine forests. Humans, who represent civilization, all refer to them as barbarians or berserkers, thinking they embody destruction, evil, and brutality. These adjectives can rival the five-color dragons, but existences that often don't conform to the mainstream of human civilization are labeled with various tags. Yet, in reality, barbarians are brave and steadfast warriors, sharp and tenacious, ruthless on the battlefield. The powerful berserkers among them dare to take on the overlords who rule the frozen wastelands, the frost giants. These barbarians are formidable warriors, so what are their weaknesses? The information running through Karon's mind was summarized: barbarians are diverse, but all harbor a deeply rooted fury, uncontrolled, unceasing, and thoughtless anger. Barbarian rage is not just an emotion, but the ferocity of a predator driven to despair, a stormy and reckless onslaught like the rolling waves in the sea. Though such fury affords barbarian warriors many advantages, like agility and strength enhancement. But excessive rage can allow their minds to be dominated by anger, causing strict formation to collapse without an attack. Then, Karon stepped forward and crushed the corpse of the reckless and arrogant barbarian warrior on the ground into a bloody pulp. The massive dragon claw crushed the barbarian warrior's body, while the crimson vertical eyes provocatively stared at the barbarians still holding on to their rationality. Sure enough, this insulting and contemptuous action thoroughly enraged these already anger-prone barbarians, causing red veins to spread across their eyes, and in a blink, their eyes were filled with disturbing red light. "You damn winged reptile! I'll cut off your wings, break your spine, and make you like the lowliest hunting dog." The enraged barbarians instantly dismantled their previously organized formation, with the barbarians in the rear, previously behind heavy shields, roaring. Their rage made their strength surge, swinging their heavy axes like toys. They impulsively leaped over the front-line heavy shield warriors, wanting to chop the red dragon's flesh with their axes, soothing their angry souls. But the red dragon merely pretended to escape. As the barbarians approached gradually, their bodies suddenly halted, with the stout dragon claws gripping the ground securely. The long, powerful tail that dragged along the ground suddenly rose, precisely striking the heads of those berserk barbarian warriors who were charging crazily, like a spear from behind. The hard tip of the tail under the immense dragon's strength was more fearsome than any weapon, and as a result, these barbarians' heads shattered like watermelons struck heavily, releasing a murky mixture of brain matter and streaks of blood red. Roar, the dragon power from Karon's body, always concentrated and unyielding, scattered from the red dragon's body at this critical moment, slightly disturbing those frenzied barbarian warriors, and then he lunged fiercely. These barbarian warriors, abruptly counterattacked, even in their frenzy state, couldn't withstand a 9-meter-long red dragon without the protection of formation. Karon's robust body collided with the oncoming barbarians, with dragon claws sharper than any ironware effortlessly harvesting the lives of all remaining barbarians, leaving the ground covered with fragmented bodies momentarily. The cheers of the gladiatorial arena suddenly became agitated, yet Karon was growing weary of such dull life. His dormant period was nearing, and possibly after enduring it, even the last shred of relative freedom would be stripped away, compelling him to willingly sign a contract with the Emperor. Tell Hughes and the others to quicken their pace, I'm getting impatient. My dragon fire has been suppressed for too long, and I'm becoming impatient. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 61-19, Dragon Descendant. Chapter 61, Chapter 19, Dragon Descendant. Time continues to flow. The atmosphere in the Gata Empire has recently started to become tense. The Emperor of the Imperial's vigorous ambition to conquer rapidly swelled under the push of those hidden powerful forces. Under the near self-detrimental resource supply from the Dragon Group territory, the Empire's military gradually became enriched. And the resources from the Land of Golden, exchanged with the neutral faction nobility, provided the Empire with ample food reserves. With sufficient exchange of interests, the nobility no longer hesitated to exchange resources. However, before the Gata Empire could take action, the neighboring human duchy Marino quietly launched an attack on the Empire's southernmost province, successfully breaking through the province's defenses. They not only looted food and weapon resources rampantly but also drove many of the population to Marino Duchy's territory. Emperor Carol Caesar of the Empire flew into a rage and dispatched 2 legions to support the already corrupted southern province front line. But somehow, the information leaked out, and both legions were ambushed by Marino Duchy's army, resulting in complete annihilation. Even the legion commander, who had stepped into the holy sanctuary, was publicly slain by Marino Duchy's holy sanctuary warrior commander. For a moment, the Gata Empire was in trouble. The Emperor of the Imperial had the rationale and strength to start a war, but the situation did not proceed smoothly as he expected. Karon now felt a surge of drowsiness. His sleep cycle was approaching, but he resisted his sleepiness and looked at the tall wolfman who had just returned from the gladiatorial arena. The wolfman went with the vampire species, but only he returned. Luck no longer favored the vampire species and wolfman. Their fight was a life and death duel. Scars on the wolfman's body were bone deep, with wounds exposing flesh and even internal organs from the abdomen. This fight must have been fierce. But the wolfman who survived did not show any sign of happiness on his face. He silently dragged his deeply scarred body into the chamber. Hey, how was the taste of vampire species flesh? Weren't you always yelling about wanting to eat them? The centaur warrior, long aware of his destined fate, teased the wolfman, yet there was no smile on his face. Not tasty at all, the wolfman replied hoarsely, but I swallowed his heart core, now his fate will always be linked with mine. Tisk, the centaur fell silent. The heart core of vampire species is the most vital in their bloodline. Perhaps returning this heart core to the blood pool of the vampire species sanctuary for a few hundred years might revive the vampire, but now that possibility is gone. Guard me. Red Dragon's crimson eyes were filled with a misty drowsiness. He spoke in a deep voice, I'm about to go to sleep. When someone calls me awake, we will reclaim our destiny. Hidden in the darkness, the silver-haired wolfman's emerald green eyes lit up. He reappeared from the shadows, knelt in his chamber, bowed to the red dragon, I will guard you with my life, Lord Karon. The centaur warrior exhaled, his strong body also knelt down, I, Karon, son of the legitimate centaur tribe, will guard you with my life. Red Dragon nodded, closed his eyes, and soon his breathing became steady, he began to sleep. And those juvenile dragons also began entering sleep around this time. Their childhood had lasted long enough, it was time to step into adolescence. Perhaps the gladiatorial arena lacked experience in raising giant dragons. By the time they realized it, the dragons were already in their sleep cycle. They dared not disturb the sleeping giant dragons. As dragons undergo irritation during their bloodline growth, they didn't want to be torn apart by dragons. By the time they reported upwards, it became clear the Empire's high officials were too busy with the crisis to manage these matters, thus, the arena's administrators simply allowed these juvenile dragons to sleep silently underground. The subterranean cell where the giant dragons slept began to be deliberately ignored by the arena attendants. They hardly dared to enter that basement cell, and even those gladiators of various races imprisoned there started to be neglected. Slowly, time passed, changes occurred in the calm underground cell. Every dragon tends to create a nest effect where they frequently stay, although these juvenile dragons have a small nest effect. But due to the overly narrow space and dense distribution of these juvenile dragons, gradually, the nest effect began spreading from Karon's cell, the strongest dragons. Gradually coming into contact with the influence of other juvenile dragons, suddenly some mysterious connection developed between them. This effect under the mysterious connection produced an unknown resonance. Under the dominant nest effect of the red dragon, an inexplicable aura began spreading throughout the entire underground cell. And the juvenile dragons undergoing bloodline growth strengthened this resonance's nest effect power, gradually impacting all different races of gladiators within this basement. Their personalities, once molded by tedious and indifferent life, gradually began to shift, becoming irritable and aggressive. They craved the flesh of their originally peaceful companions. As the arena attendants continued neglecting this area, the starving warriors of various races abruptly erupted into battle one day, every cell cloaked in slaughter and bloodshed. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 62-19, Dragon Descendant, Part 2. Chapter 62, Chapter 19, Dragon Descendant, Part 2. They roared at each other, tearing each other's bodies apart, deciding victory or defeat in the most savage and simple way. Teeth and claws unleashed unimaginable destructive power on their bodies, with blood flowing like rivers and flesh everywhere. The weaker ones perished at the hands of the stronger, and their bodies were devoured by the victors. After satisfying themselves with flesh and blood, these victors, replenished with nutritional energy, entered slumber, just like the giant dragons. A layer of extremely tough skin began to grow on the surface of their bodies, and short spikes emerged from the facial skin of various appearances, transforming into the legendary bloodline of the dragon descendants. The most powerful centaur and wolfman among these creatures also underwent some magical and bizarre mutation under the radiating influence of the increasingly potent bloodline of the red dragon. In the absence of food supplementation, they too, through some mysterious method, fell into a voluntary slumber. The bodies of the wolfman and centaur experienced different changes on the surface. The centaur's bloodline was already inferior to the blood of ancestral evil dragon of the red dragon, so although his strength was greater than that of the wolfman, he was more significantly affected. The centaur's already resilient outer skin was covered with crimson scales, similar in color to those on the body of the red dragon, granting him a stronger defensive capability than before. The tail of the centaur also began to transform into the tail of the red dragon. The plush hair of the horse tail began to fall off, and the newly grown hair was coarse and short, resembling some kind of leathery spike. His ears transformed into erect ears like those of the dragon descendants, and his body became even stronger under this influence, with his slowly beating heart making a sound like the drumming of a heartbeat. A similarly wondrous change occurred with the wolfman. However, the wolfman did not grow scales like those of the red dragon on his body. Instead, his hair gradually fell away, and a layer of extremely tough leather skin covered the wolfman's original skin. The regrown fur turned white mixed with crimson, like a layer of flame burning on white fur. Two wings burst forth from either side of the wolfman's shoulder blades, and when they reached a certain size, a layer of red fine scales began to cover the newly grown flesh wings. Two small dragon horns emerged from the beautiful fur atop the wolfman's head. If these dragon horns hadn't continued to grow and thicken over time, the wolfman's head would look hilariously like it had 4 ears. The bodies of the juvenile dragons too began to change amid the growth of their bloodline, traversing the limitations of age due to the nourishment of their bloodline, and once again engaging in growth and development. Their previously somewhat fine scales began to grow larger and thicker, and the color of the scales gradually shifted from bright to deep. Spines of varying lengths began to spread from both sides of their heads, just like Karen's, resonating with the nest effect as the growth of the bloodline also achieved confluence to some extent. Kleena, the young female dragon, who continually engaged in combat and drank deeply of her adversary's blood, seemed to have satisfied some craving within her evil dragon blood. The will of the evil dragon blood quietly receded, and a more powerful force was born from within Kleena's bloodline. A scent similar to that of the blood of ancestral return on Karon emanated from Kleena, and although it was far less intense than Karen's, without a doubt, this red dragon had also successfully embarked on that successful path. The blood of ancestral return, the most orthodox and powerful method for the giant dragons, existed because giant dragons were born of the dragon god. Thus, the closer the bloodline of the giant dragon is to the dragon god, the more strength they possess. Karon, the strongest red dragon among the dragon group, also continuously adjusted his body amid the growth of his bloodline. After repeated exercises of using will to influence heart energy for enhancement, Karon had now begun to let his will influence heart energy, making adaptive adjustments to his body amid the growth of his bloodline. Originally, when the five-color dragon was born in the hands of dragon god Tiamat, they all basically possessed a very strange body proportion. The long neck, like a serpent's, occupied about 1/3 of the body's proportions. The tail also took up 1/3, leaving the relatively most important body to also make up 1/3 of the proportions. Although the relatively thicker neck of the red dragon covered up this overly strange proportion compared to other five-color dragons, Karon still felt that the proportion was too ugly. Moreover, the overly long neck appeared more vulnerable to attacks, representing a weakness. Furthermore, analysis by the sub-brain showed that for the red dragon, this proportion bore more disadvantages than advantages. Thus, under Karon's influence, analyzed and controlled by the sub-brain, his already somewhat adjusted neck gradually shortened its body proportion, turning into a relatively normal length and not appearing abrupt. His neck hence grew more robust, with thick muscles and skin enveloping the neck, perfectly matching the imposing and fierce head, exhibiting a unique aesthetic of power. His body thus grew longer and sturdier, allowing for further expansion of developmental limitations within his internal organs. His blood vessels and various organs adapted due to the increase in body size. His blood vessels and various transmission nerves thus widened, and his heart grew as well, meaning that in the future, the flow of blood and magic power within him would be more turbulent. His explosiveness was also enhanced, capable of unleashing unimaginable power under mental overclocking. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 63-19, Dragon Descendant _3. Chapter 63, Chapter 19, Dragon Descendant _3. Behind the red dragon and the underside of its tail, where previously grew tissues resembling axe-winged bats, had transformed into bone spurs encased in tough skin, growing backward. These spurs are of moderate length, extending to the back of the red dragon's neck, appearing quite menacing and intimidating to those who prefer leaping onto its back. The red dragon's wings also originally grew a pair of wing claws, although in the daily life and battles of the giant dragon, these wing claws did not actually serve any purpose, as the giant dragon's agile limbs are more practical than any wing claws. More often than not, the flapping of the giant dragon's wings served a frightening purpose, and no giant dragon would rely on its wing claws to harm an enemy. Thus, under Karon's will, the largest wing claw on both wings gradually changed. It transformed into a claw-shaped membrane similar to a bony nodule, which protected the joints of the giant dragon's wings, giving the red dragon's wings a more seamless appearance. Following the lesson learned from the last time when the advanced magic ring of blazing flame shattered the wing bones, Karon also reinforced the wing bones. The originally slender wing bones grew thicker, resembling hollow bones that gradually became denser, and the hollow space inside the bones shrank. The consequence of these changes was that the giant dragon's wings became longer and wider, far larger than the proportions of ordinary giant dragon wings. These modifications and the growth of the giant dragon's bloodline required massive amounts of nutritional energy and magic power to nourish the giant dragon's body as it grew. The 9-meter-long body gradually grew to 11 meters, but the red dragon's body appeared thinner. In its body's craving, the magic power suffusing the air also began to be gathered and absorbed by the red dragon's body, but other juvenile dragons also absorbed the already scarce magic power during their growth. The magic crystals used for illumination and ordinary lights extinguished under the influence of the giant dragons. Under the effects of the red dragon's bloodline and magic power, the magic array on the underground cell walls began to be slowly eroded, with the wisps of magic patterns becoming blurred and gradually disappearing. The solid walls began to crack, and abundant fire elements seeping through the cracks carried the aura of an unknown fire elemental plane. Under the influence of the red dragon's nest effect and its bloodline, the barrier between this fire element and the main plane, I carry a world, silently broke apart, but due to the immense size of the magic array enveloping the entire gladiatorial arena, the aura was concealed. With the replenishment of elemental magic power, the red dragon's body began to fill out. Under the sufficient nourishment of elemental magic power, the red dragon's bloodline rapidly grew and underwent mystical changes. A deeper power was resurrecting and emerging from its bloodline. The red dragon, having indulged in magic power, already began to diffuse excess heat between its scale armor, engulfing the entire cell in a shroud of volcanic vapor. With the passage of time, the red dragon's power had permeated the entire underground passage, with droplets of highly condensed fire elements transforming into flowing magma, dripping into the fissures within the walls. Pop! A spark flared up in the already completely dark underground. Layers of light emitted by the giant dragons and countless droplets of dark red magma became the theme of the entire underground, resembling a deep fiery prison. Day by day, people began to believe this place had transformed into an eternal gloomy hell. Until one day, a faint call reached the red dragon's ears from afar, "Karon, Karon, wake up, the time has come." The entire dim underground suddenly lit up. That was the red dragon's opened pupil. Its crimson vertical pupil radiated an immensely fierce red light, and its deep voice echoed throughout the narrow, deep passage, "Who is calling me?" As the red dragon's voice concluded, beams of light instantaneously illuminated all dark corners of the underground. Those were pairs of eyes that similarly emitted radiance, belonging to the giant dragons, and the dragon descendants. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 64-20, Dragon Group and Monsters. Chapter 64, Chapter 20, Dragon Group and Monsters. Kill him, thrust that damn long spear as thick as my damn big stick into the body of that monster. Smash that beast, I want to see blood, death is your destiny. The stands of the gladiatorial arena were, as always, shrouded by the cries of those seeking bloody thrills. They stood on the high stands, like gods controlling the fate of the gladiators in the arena. They stood high above, like masters watching beasts fight in cages, cheering for the claws and blood of the beasts, then generously expressing their satisfaction and delight. Until the first rumbling sound came from the entire gladiatorial arena. Buzz. The sound was low yet so obvious, as if it emanated from beneath their feet, impossible for the overwhelming clamor to cover. They began to quiet down, keen to listen to this strange sound. Buzz buzz. The sound of the vibration gradually became distinct, accompanied by a slight sense of shaking, making the entire towering gladiatorial arena start to vibrate with the buzzing. This time even the alien species battling in the arena stopped, putting down their weapons. The intuition forged in countless days and nights of slaughter made them sense a deadly danger approaching. Panic started spreading among the crowd on the high stands, as they searched restlessly, frightened by the unknown disturbance. Their feverish minds cooled down, turning into dread. Many stood up from their seats, eager to leave this perilous place, but even the towering magic array above their heads failed to provide them any sense of security. Yet in the next moment, the previously slow rhythm of buzzing abruptly quickened, producing an overwhelming resonance throughout the entire gladiatorial arena. The solid, broad walls of the gladiatorial arena began cracking with fissures, the ground beneath continually vibrating with the resonance, as if demons from the abyss wanted to break the world's chains, clawing out from the bottomless chasm. "Help! Run quick! Get out of my way, don't block my path!" The crowds on the stands screamed and shrieked, no one harbored any more wishful thinking. They all swarmed towards the exits of the arena, with strong men pushing aside the frilier ones ahead of them. The elderly, women, and children were swept along by the crowd, but a slight misstep would see them fall into the throng, never to rise again. Before they managed to squeeze through the usually wide yet now seemingly narrow gates, a thunderous rumble erupted. The walls of the entire gladiatorial arena began to tilt and collapse outward amidst a bone-chilling twisting noise. Cracks made those walls unable to bear the load any longer, with numerous massive stones breaking apart, turning into tumbling debris crashing down, crushing those unable to dodge into a pulp of flesh and blood, then continuing their descent, crashing into the dust. And at this moment, the dome of the entire gladiatorial arena also appeared to crumble down like a collapsing sky. The immense magic array hovering above the gladiatorial arena, lacking the support of magic nodes, shattered abruptly like broken glass. The once solid, smooth ground cracked with deep crevices. These fissures resembled the opened gate of hell, with the thick scent of sulfur magma mixed with various ozone corrosive odors rising from the deep clefts. Dark red, deep crimson molten fire kept surging upward with pungent sulfurous fumes, licking the robustly built high stands. Then converging into rivers of magma and molten fire, spreading over every space along the flat terrain. With a crash, the base of the high stands couldn't withstand the corrosion of the magma and the vibration of the resonance any longer. The base used for support, under the terrified gaze of the crowd, snapped and crumbled directly. Countless people fell with the collapsing high stands amidst desperate screams, buried by the collapsing structures, alongside once lofty stands, engulfed by dust and debris. For the few lucky ones who escaped instant death and remained praying in the ruins, they found the once boiling world suddenly became quiet. A peculiar feeling led them to gaze towards the center of the gladiatorial arena, where amidst billowing dust and swirling molten vapor, pairs of red pupils emerged, hidden within. Within those pupils dwelled coldness, savagery, cruelty, seemingly containing every negative emotion of the world. The owners of these pairs of pupils revealed themselves as the dust began to dissipate. Sulfur fumes and molten vapor encircled them, like crimson halos clad upon their bodies. Each one of them had massive, robust naked bodies adorned with tightly packed scales, showcasing remarkable defensive power. Beneath the various colored scales, knotted muscles bulged, signifying the terrifying strength they possessed. The sturdiest among them, covered with silver and crimson hair, bore a pair of spiraling upward dragon horns on his head, with wings that could spread open wide enough to cover the sky, unconsciously flapping, stirring waves of molten fire and magma around him. This was a dragon wolf species. Monday monster. The monster has escaped. The lucky ones hiding beneath the ruins trembled uncontrollably, with a pungent odor starting to spread from a wet mark at their crotch. Thump, thump, thump. Heavy footsteps approached from behind these monsters. These monsters remained silent, bowing towards the source of the sound. An even larger red creature manifested amidst the boiling molten vapor. An 11-meter-long body was like the embodiment of worldly strength, defined muscular lines bulging distinctly, with body curves resembling stone-carved sculptures bulging clearly. On its majestic and ferocious head, 2 pairs of stout branching dragon horns appeared as if they had traversed out from purgatory. Its body was cloaked in crimson scales, which in the steaming heat seemed wrapped in a flowing, dissipating flame. Creatures of various large statures and colors emerged from behind this red creatures, white creatures, black creatures, blue creatures. The size of each creature was larger than the dragon wolf species, but they all remained silent, looking towards the foremost, most powerful red creature. That was their leader, also the master of all the creatures present. The vertical pupils of the red creature burned with flowing fire, from its nostrils came flowing sparks. It raised its majestic, fearsome head and roared, with the rolling dragon language reverberating through the ruins. Come, I can't wait any longer. The time for the dragon group to hunt has arrived. Roar! The monsters behind it raised their heads, roaring skyward, emitting their first excited dragon roar since being trapped. Those kneeling down also lifted their heads, letting out chilling roars. With a whoosh, the red creature spread its nearly 20-meter wingspan, lifting into the air with its angry dragon group, accompanied by howling winds lying dormant beneath its powerful wings. The dragon group rode on tempestuous winds, closely following. The dragon group soared in the sky, while the dragon descendants ran upon the earth, ready to drink deeply of their adversaries' blood. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 65-21, Crushing Domination. Chapter 65, Chapter 21, Crushing Domination. The entire city was in chaos, and the master of Hobbies, the emperor of the Imperial, had already been diverted by various hidden forces. He himself was attracted by the quagmire of the battlefront, leading his powerful legion to the city of Mados near the front line, where he conducted inspections and consoled his frontline legion and generals. Perhaps in the heart of Carol Caesar too, as long as he and his loyal and powerful legion remained, the interior of the Imperial would always be stable, not to mention he left the loyal general Care with the city garrison to guard the Imperial city. Although he was rushing to the front with the Royal Mage Corps, his longtime friend, the Royal Grand Mage Ephorus was also closely monitoring the mages in the Imperial city who might make a move. Moreover, there were those nobles loyal to him, although most nobles were fence-sitters, as long as he existed, they would offer their loyalty. But this emperor of the Imperial seemed to underestimate the human mind, and the changes were beyond his expectations. The ambitious individuals lurking in the shadows far exceeded his imagination. Countless private armies of nobles quietly infiltrated the imperial city under well-prepared circumstances, finally revealing themselves today. Wearing their family crests, banding marked ribbons, donning their armor, and grabbing refined weapons, they began to flood the estates of nobles loyal to the emperor. The pedestrians on the streets quickly fled back to their residences in this strange atmosphere, shutting their doors and secretly observing the changes outside. Will Clarence was recently considered quite successful. Not only did he earn a title through his own capabilities, but he also gained the Emperor's favor, becoming the head of the Knight Order. Although this Knight Order mostly consisted of noble sons who came for gilding, being able to enter this Knight Order and serve as the head proved he had gradually entered the core threshold of nobility. He was in his study, contemplating his grand ambitions, unsatisfied with the family's original land which wasn't wealthy. Thus, like most nobles, he began to socialize and interact within the noble circle. But the distant noise and shouting outside the estate startled him, his face showing a hint of displeasure. He stood up with a frown and ordered the servant beside him, "Go, see what's happening outside, see who dares to cause trouble in my place." The servant quickly rushed back in a panic, gasping for breath, said, "Master Will, it's not good, our estate is surrounded, outside are the private armies of other noble families trying to invade." "What?" Will Clarence was shocked and angry. Although he was unclear about the current situation, a noble estate could not withstand an attack for long. It wasn't the family's land fortress. Will Clarence took a deep breath, his expression steadied. He knew the best choice now was to abandon the estate and those immobile ladies, gather his private warriors and break out to join the Knight Order, and then see what to do. "Go, gather the family's warriors and break out with me," Will ordered the servant. He also donned exquisite armor, grabbed his magic weapon and stood in the courtyard waiting for the warriors to arrive. Soon, nearly 100 well-equipped family elite warriors gathered together, following him rushing towards the estate's back gate. The moment the door opened, a shower of arrows came down, and the warriors raised their small shields to block the incoming arrows. Occasionally, Some unfortunate ones were hit in the leg and knelt to the ground, but the others didn't have time to care for their companions, instead drawing their weapons and following Will Clarence charging out. Will Clarence unleashed his full power, with the seed of power, bronze certificate within him arousing immense strength. Wielding the magic greatsword, none could hold him back for a time. With Will Clarence, possessing high-tier extraordinary warrior strength, leading the charge as the spearhead, the group broke through the yet-to-be-supported other noble private armies, losing only more than 10 family warriors. Just as Will Clarence rejoiced for breaking through the siege, a dragon group ridden by the whistling wind descended from the sky with anger and menace. Boom! Karon's massive dragon body enveloped in the whirlwinds arrived, thick and powerful dragon claws stepping on the tall walls, sharp dragon claws clawed deep holes into the hard stone-built walls. His broad and powerful wings spread, with his massive body casting a shadow covering the entire street in the sunlight, with red vertical pupils coldly gazing down on the tiny humans. The dragon group landed with the red dragon. Several giant dragons squatted on the tall walls lining both sides of the street, surrounding Will Clarence and his company in the central open space, their vertical pupils reflecting desires for destruction and violence. Kleena landed on the street, crushing several warriors who couldn't evade in time beneath her foot. Their blood and flesh turned to paste and splattered from under the foot of this ferocious she-dragon. Meanwhile, those dragon-descendant creatures watched the other noble private armies approaching from behind with fierce eyes, clearly not allowing anyone else to intervene. Especially the wolf species with the dragon horn, who had somehow procured an iron gate, holding it diagonally in one strong arm, their blood-red eyes threateningly glaring at the noble's private army. "Will Clarence, I've waited a long time for this day," Karon's voice rumbled through the street, filled with an uncontrollable thirst for blood and excitement. He finally understood why villains often monologue at this final moment. Without doing so, they can't vent certain emotions within. "Red Dragon, since you've escaped, how dare you linger here? You should be fleeing this city without delay." Will Clarence's golden hair fluttered, and he felt a sinking despair, falling into an abyss. Yet, he held on to a sliver of hope, believing the evil dragon was a common enemy, thinking he only needed to delay, and a chance for survival would emerge. Stop fantasizing. What you hoped for has already failed. Those people now have their hands full. The red dragon shattered Will's hope, growing impatient. The dragon's wings stirred a fierce wind, with howling gusts accompanying his words as they rushed toward Will Clarence. "I once considered crushing your corpse and leaving it to be devoured by wild dogs in the wilderness. I think that idea is quite appealing." The red dragon's power descended with his words, his massive body crashing into the crowd, his powerful wings slicing effortlessly through the warriors attempting to block him with their shields. Under the red dragon's formidable strength, these iron-clad shields were as fragile as tofu, and their bodies were no sturdier than the shields they held. Other giant dragons also swooped down from the walls, their white fangs targeting the warriors who evaded the attack, like tigers among sheep, tearing them to pieces. For a moment, the street was filled with harrowing screams. A massacre had begun. And the red dragon's dive continued, his hard, menacing head aimed at the ready Will Clarence. Karon decided to crush the enemy before him with his own body. Boom! The magic greatsword in Will's hand erupted with a piercing bronze flame, blocking before his chest, while his enchantment-infused battle armor glimmered with magic radiance, resisting the red dragon's formidable power. But the red dragon, now past its juvenile stage, had grown into a young red dragon with increased strength, an existence beyond ordinary. Its power was not something Will Clarence could withstand. The moment the thick, winding dragon horn on the red dragon's head collided with the magic greatsword, Will Clarence felt utterly powerless as he was sent flying by the red dragon's terrifying strength. The magic greatsword shattered instantly, crashing to the ground, and the enchanted battle armor shattered its magic radiance as well. Severely shaken, he couldn't help but vomit blood, mixed with small pieces of his internal organs. Fortunately, Will Clarence was a high-tier warrior, though only having just stepped into high-tier extraordinary, his life force remained robust enough, and with the protection of the seed of power within him, he did not perish on the spot. But perhaps it wasn't a stroke of luck, as Karon folded his wide wings, the street wide enough, but now the city's structures became a constraint. The red dragon walked in front of Will, its cold, vertical pupils condescendingly gazing at this once threatening opponent, now someone he could casually crush. Ah! A tragic cry of pain. Will Clarence's legs were crushed and shattered beneath the dragon's claw, while his hands were severed by the red dragon's sharp claws. Spare me! Will Clarence's face showed none of his former high spirits, beads of sweat dripped from his forehead, and he endured the intense pain to plead with the giant dragon before him. My family will pay heaps of gold coins to ransom me back, if only you spare me, great red dragon. Don't die right away, Will. The red dragon opened its maw filled with fangs, laughing grimly. You haven't yet witnessed how I will destroy your family, squeeze your kin to death one by one, burn your family to ash. Hold on for just a bit longer. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 66-22, Dragon Fire. Chapter 66, Chapter 22, Dragon Fire. After receiving basic treatment, Will Clarence had a thick rope pierced through his scapula and was hung on the long tail of the white dragon Kamid. In this way, whether the white dragon was flying or walking on the ground, he would be dragged like a dog. Moreover, with all his limbs broken, he could only be dragged behind like a dead dog. This was the humiliation the red dragon returned to him. And Karon led the dragon group and the newly recruited dragon descendant monsters towards the mansion that originally belonged to Will Clarence. To enhance Will Clarence's experience of it, they walked, letting white dragon Kamid drag the former noble all the way, leaving a long trail of blood on the wide street. The private army of the other nobles did not dare to stop the red dragon, just the sight of the mighty dragon made them lose any other thoughts, not to mention they were now considered allies. Before Will Clarence's very eyes, the dragon descendant monsters broke through the not-so-sturdy defenses of his own mansion. Inside this noble mansion, every life encountered was ended under their claws. One by one, the servants and butlers were torn to pieces by the monsters, with blood staining the entire mansion. Even his most beloved mistress, hiding in the basement, was dragged out and beheaded in public, with spurts of fresh blood soaking the stone floor. Filled with endless regret, Will Clarence could only watch helplessly as everything unfolded, having even lost the strength to beg for mercy. The red dragon had already made up its mind to erase him and his family from the world. When the giant dragons once again descended upon the mansion of the Clarence clan patriarch, the imperial treasurer, the private army of the nobles had just breached the gates of the residence, attributed only to the efficiency of the dragons and their dragon descendant underlings. When the dragons perched once more on the walls of the treasurer's mansion, the face of the old treasurer, surrounded by his family elite warriors, turned pale. Especially when he saw the barely alive Will Clarence, the clan's eldest son, hanging from the dragon's tail. Alas, the eager pursuit of honor and power blinds one's sense of danger, sighed the aged face of the imperial treasurer. Yet, holding on to a shred of hope, he pleaded to the red dragon sprawled atop the high wall, I am willing to give up all the family's territories, begging the noble giant dragon to spare us. The Clarence clan will forever be loyal vassals to the dragon. All the dragons looked to the red dragon, waiting for his decision. Even though the flames of revenge had not yet subsided, these matters needed the approval of the king of the dragon clan. Old fool, even if you are beaten to death, everything of yours would still be ours. Do you think the dragon group cares about your pitiable little lands? The red dragon's long fangs were bared, its crimson eyes reflecting nothing but the cold, ruthless indifference of a beast. Its thundering voice echoed within the crowded mansion, offenders of the dragon group are unforgivable. Your blood will be proof of the dragon group's unyielding vengeance. Responding to the call, the giants and dragon descendant monsters roared in excitement. Klena's chest and belly lines lit up, and her long contained dragon fire spewed from her wide open mouth, burning the warriors crowded in the vast courtyard. The dragon fire ignited the anger of the dragons and the attack lust of the monsters. The other dragons also opened their mouths wide, spewing out their own breath. Black Dragon Rosani exhaled its acid breath like a water cannon, spraying the warriors holding up shields to block it. Once touched by the spreading acid, even a little, the warrior's skin would fester, with the acid seeping through the wounds. White Dragon Kamid's freezing breath was like the coldest winter fog, slowing the warriors' movements and freezing their limbs. Then there was the Blue Dragon's lightning breath, and the Green Dragon's venomous breath, fan-shaped breaths enveloping those warriors. Even the elite warriors in the private armies of the nobility were harvested by the dragon's breaths, and those lucky enough to escape the breath's range were immediately pounced upon and shredded by the silent, bloodthirsty dragon descendant monsters, even the toughest skulls crushed underfoot. And that once high almighty treasurer, in the first wave of dragon breath, was incinerated by Kleena's blazing dragon fire into a flaming man, rolling and howling on the ground until turning into a pile of ashes. Freed from restraint, the dragons exploited their advantages, effortlessly obliterating all of the Clarence clan's core forces in the city. The entire mansion also collapsed into countless rubble and broken wood under the dragon's power. But the dragon group was not satisfied. Under Karon's lead, they soared back into the sky, riding the free wind to head straight for the residences of other aristocrats. "Damn it, you monsters, His Majesty the Emperor will come back and twist all your heads off, hanging them on the city walls." The grief-stricken imperial treasurer, Rebus, glared with bloodshot eyes, watching as members of his family were dragged out one by one and publicly executed in the streets by those monsters, not even sparing his pet wolfhound. Blood flowed over Rebus's insteps, and he was held down by two monsters, forced to watch helplessly as these events unfolded. PFF, as the last member of his family, his most beloved son, was also beheaded by the terrifying monsters, he could no longer hold back a mouthful of old blood from spewing out. Finally, Rebus's head was hung on the city's clock tower by the dragon group, gazing down upon the city, awaiting the return of his emperor. Numerous noble factions loyal to the Emperor of the Imperial were crushed by the giant dragons and monsters, and those noble private armies that failed to retreat from the battlefield were also annihilated by the dragon group and monsters. Bodies and ashes littered the city, which was filled with a heavy stench of blood. The final target of the dragon group was none other than the tall and magnificent imperial palace. The dragon descendants beloved on the ground were also sprinting, their strong and powerful legs allowing them to cover great distances with each leap, following far behind the dragon group. Like their masters, they were not yet satisfied by the blood before their eyes. At this moment, the imperial palace was in chaos as well. With the help of insiders, the palace gates had already fallen. The emperor's most trusted general, Karon, had no choice but to retreat with the original city garrison and the attendant army guarding the palace, to behind the final palace walls. The sturdy walls and heavy doors firmly withstood the noble army which hadn't yet received siege equipment support, but he didn't know that today would be the battlefield for the dragon group. When Karon led the dragon group in a high-speed dive from the sky in a triangular wedge formation, the airflow from the giant dragon's wings carried a sharp whistle, like arrows of divine punishment from the heavens. The dragon group began to adjust their wing angles after the leading red dragon, controlling their diving speed and impact route, to avoid being shot by the giant crossbows on the walls. Then the magic power in the sky started to converge towards the giant dragons, and an excess of magic elements was absorbed by the dragons. Every giant dragon began a rare deep breathing, as they brewed a breath of extraordinary power. The garrison, originally in neat formation on the walls, began to scatter upon seeing the massive bodies of the dragon group rapidly enlarging as they dove, the shadow casting over their heads, and the increasingly urgent sharp whistling. But they were too late to make any decisions, pulled by an emotion of extreme shock beyond words. They could only raise their heads unconsciously to watch the ever-approaching enormous dragon group in the sky. The particularly robust red dragon led the dragon group in an agile yet violent maneuver in the sky, preparing to unleash a breath, as the destructive dragon fire descended to the earth. Fully activating the Ashen Domain and the King of Earth and Metal talent, Karon was engulfed in an intense heat and terrifying dragon power. Even these elite warriors picked from various legions could not withstand such power, their armor seemingly possessing its own will, beginning to writhe, and they started to flee for their lives. But the wrath of the monarch had already descended in the form of destructive flames upon them. Moreover, Karon had deliberately transformed his breath into a fan-shaped flame breath to expand his attack range this time. His flame breath mixed with the magic power in the air, generating strange and frightening reactions, with turbulent magic power surging within the ravaging dragon fire, unparalleled high temperatures bringing purgatory down. Under Karon's domain augmentation, the momentary temperature soared to thousands of degrees, high enough to rival the flames on the sun. The searing heat, as if intent on burning everything to ash, enveloped the garrison formation with air distorted by the heat, moving towards the entire garrison on the palace walls, scorching every part of the fortifications. Where the furious dragon fire reached, all things turned to ash. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 67-23, Yoahu. Chapter 67, Chapter 23, Yoahu. Under the incomparable scorching heat of dragon fire, some of the garrison army's enchanted leather armor and magic iron armor melted and ignited, while their flesh was vaporized by the terrifying high temperature. And the air shock wave caused by the high temperature swept away the remnants of these beings. Even some extremely lucky advanced warriors, who barely survived the first wave of dragon fire attack from the red dragon by unleashing all their strength, faced the attack from Karon's dragon group behind them, where these giant dragons also unleashed their first ever super breath since their birth. Kleina's dragon fire, although not as terrifying as Karon's, was just as brutal, thanks to her blood of ancestral return. The subsequent lightning breath attack was equally deadly, with the blue dragon Das also unleashing his strongest thunderbolt, plowing through the attack range of the red dragon. Then came the white dragon's deep cold breath, leaving the garrison army with no strength left to resist the freezing power of the white dragon, thus becoming ice sculptures standing on the city wall. The icy sculptures quickly melted in the battlefield's residual heat, leaving only piles of dry ash. The following green dragon venom and black dragon acid merely bathed the entire city wall, as the mightiest warrior, General Care, who had just entered the early Saint realm, dared not face the wrath of the dragon group head-on, having abandoned his troops and fled before Karon's first dragon fire arrived. Without being targeted or restrained, the giant dragons soaring through the sky are much more terrifying than mage turrets. Under the continuous ravaging by the giant dragons and Karon's earth-controlling powers, the upper city wall was already on the verge of collapse. Meanwhile, the beloved monsters of the dragon group and the remaining noble private armies stood agape, watching the giant dragons freely soar and roar in the sky. This ruined battlefield and the crumbling city wall deter even the strongest dragon-blooded centaur and dragon-descendant wolfman from easily setting foot on it. This is not the strength of a young dragon. Karon is an extremely dangerous giant dragon, said the squinting mage standing high above, gazing at the giant dragon freely exhibiting its power in the sky. Even though he knew the red dragon had outstanding talents, he couldn't help but be amazed by its power. Some nobles and mages also observed from afar, feeling fear and dread towards the unfettered power of the dragon group. The giant dragons displayed their strength, leaving an indelible impression on these people. Thousands of elite garrison army members have now turned to ash drifting in the wind, the entire process taking less than 10 minutes. Thus, when the red dragon rampaged within the imperial palace with the dragon group, the nobles and mages no longer thought to dissuade the giant dragons. The magnificent and tall palace was demolished by the giant dragons, then fire and molten lava burned everything, flattening the entire imperial palace. Those attendants, servants, and other guards who escaped were executed one by the dragon descendants surrounding them, with blood spilling over every inch of the floor. After unsuccessfully searching for General Care, Karon abandoned this idea, finally fully wielding the magic power of earth and metal. Boundless lava and molten fire surged from the underground, engulfing the palace complex, and the hall belonging to the emperor completely sank into the earth. Those who hid within the palace also perished in the sea of flames, their terrified screams resembling the confessional poetry of sinners sinking into hell. A fierce rain of fire descended from the sky, and scorching lava gushed from the ground. The entire imperial palace area collapsed under the rampage of the giant dragons, sinking into a graveyard of lava and flames, with those tall palace walls destroyed and reduced to ruins. After venting his anger, Karon did not greet the old mage Lapuz. Despite having agreements with the mages, he distrusts these humans enough. In fact, had he been able to contend against the mages within the mage tower, he might have burned the whole city to ashes, not caring about being labeled an evil dragon, for he was born as one. Karon led the dragon group to ride the fierce wind, ascending again into the sky, as today he was fulfilling his promise to take the dragon group home. The Pick little elf, who had been secretly observing, also revealed herself riding her contracted magic pet, a swift measuring over 3 meters long, and flew into the sky. With Karon deliberately restraining his dragon power and the little elf's urgent prompting, the swift mustered the courage to fly close to the red dragon's body, its trembling wings fluctuating up and down, struggling to fly alongside the red dragon. Pico little elf Riven's round little face was filled with joy and a sense of achievement. In her heart, saving her friends had her share of contribution. She not only felt happy for Karon and the giant dragon friends but also proud of herself. Thus, Riven patted her white tender chest and shouted at the red dragon, "Yo-ho, mighty and fierce Karon, let's go home together." Indeed, the red dragon, in its deep, resonant voice during its giant dragon voice change period, echoed through the sky, "We go home." But the powerful gusts from the red dragon's broad wings accidentally flipped the swift in a somersault, prompting Riven to hurriedly soar back, as the sky filled with the little elf's rebukes and the giant dragon's melodic dragon songs and laughter. The king of the dragon group finally embarked on the homeward journey today, bringing a dawn of freedom. The departing Karon did not know that today's battle, the scene where the overwhelming dragon fire turned thousands of warriors to ash, had garnered much attention, with this event fermenting and quickly spreading. Moreover, some capricious mages used precious recording crystals to capture this moment, starting to circulate it among mages, then one by one among hundreds, and hundreds to the masses. People marveled at the display of power by this young red dragon, knowing that young dragons often lack strength, with metal dragons still sheltered under their parents' wings, and 5-color dragons quietly growing in corners. Yet this red dragon's displayed strength vastly exceeded the capabilities expected at this stage of giant dragons, especially as the differently hued 5-color dragons willingly rallied under his banner. A dragon group commanded by a red dragon is far more terrifying than those clan-dwelling blue dragon families. As the imperial city was conquered and divided by various nobles, these nobles who once had their private independent territories proclaimed themselves as various kingdoms, duchies, and baronies. Even the emperor of the imperial's initial private territory was entirely divided by various nobles. And the emperor, with several legions alone outside, became akin to a tree without roots, only able to establish the Gata duchy in the already decayed southern province. This news spread across the northern continent, with the mighty Gata Empire disintegrating due to the capture of a group of young giant dragons and their grown-up retaliation, evoking much lamentation. With the spread of this news, the southernmost continental human kingdoms also began to notice this young group of giant dragons, listing them as targets requiring extra attention in the evil giant dragon register. Even the 5-colored giant dragons and the flocking metal dragons hidden in the wilderness forest knew that a powerful giant dragon family had emerged in the world, and this dragon group made a name for itself in one battle. Because the leader of this dragon group was named Karon Gogomola, the dragon group was thus called Gogomola Dragon Group. The territory where the dragon group resided, originally just unnamed wilderness, was now known as Gogomola Dragon Group's giant dragon nest. Everyone knew, due to this experience and lesson, upon returning to their territory, the dragon group would surely subdue many fierce beloved monsters, control their domain, and turn their territory into a kingdom of monsters similar to other powerful giant dragons. Luckily for the newly established human duchies and baronies in the northern lands, this dragon group was once their cooperative partner. The leader of the dragon group is also a wise and rational giant dragon, appearing to have much room for communication, sparing them from the day and night worries reserved for other evil dragons. As for the talk of good and evil camps, these nobles and mages scoffed at it, believing that if evil could bring them enough benefit, then it should be praised as a kind of good. Wise nobles and intelligent mages hold no prejudice, at least when it comes to matters of interest. And Karon, this dangerous and uniquely looking red dragon, due to his demonstrated power, was named King of Earth and Metal, a tyrant commanding flames and molten lava. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 68-24, An Unexpected Encounter. Chapter 68, Chapter 24, An Unexpected Encounter. Karon and the dragon group flew at an altitude of nearly 1,000 meters, a very safe flying distance. The giant dragon's supervision allowed them to see everything on the ground clearly from high above, and prevented some creatures from using stealth spell to sneak in for a surprise attack, which gave the giant dragons enough time to react. In consideration of those dragon descendants who could only travel on 2 or 4 legs, the dragon group deliberately slowed down, even though they were already eager to return home. Of course, even those monsters like dragon descendant Wolfman Saha, who had grown wings through blood radiation, dared not spread their wings in front of the giant dragons and had to advance together with those who ran on 2 legs. Karon's supervision overlooked the entire land, and even though they tried to avoid densely populated towns according to the Little Elf's route, there were still many villages scattered across the land. But these villages and the villagers were not the main characters in the wilderness. Scattered green-skinned goblins, robber kobolds, jackal wolfmen occupying mountain swamps, and small-scale wandering ogres were everywhere. There were also countless beast tribes roaming the wilderness, some powerful enough to give birth to fierce beast leaders, and these creatures were the main theme of the wilderness forests. Karon even saw several suspected dragon nest caves in some mountain ranges closer to human activity areas, which should be the nests of those metal dragon species. It's likely that there might be quite a few like red copper dragon, bronze dragon, especially since their return route was close to the sea. Karon currently did not want to provoke these creatures, he was not at the point of being blind to everything, and these metal dragons often had their own dragon vein circle. Provoking one meant provoking a group. Just like when Red Dragon encounters Silver Dragon, in a solitary battle, Silver Dragon is generally not a match for Red Dragon, but often the result is Silver Dragon achieving victory. Because Silver Dragons don't speak of fighting spirit, they not only pull in other metal dragons to fight cooperatively, but might also bring human dragon slayer squads. According to Karon's knowledge, there was an ancient red dragon that flipped in front of an adult silver dragon, as that silver dragon crazily brought several human dragon slayer squads and multiple giant dragons together to besiege the ancient red dragon, including an adult golden dragon. And the golden dragon's dragon vein circle needs no further explanation, those who understand, and those who don't learn when they die. Karon led the dragon group away from mountain ranges that might harbor powerful creatures, specifically heading toward the coastal route. The wild animals and beasts along the way did not notice the dragons who had restrained their dragon power, but the arrival of powerful dragon descendant monsters still made these animals flee far away. The strengths of these dragon descendant monsters varied widely, but on average they were fearsome. Especially among the dragon descendant monsters were powerful dragon descendant wolfman and dragon-blooded centaur. These 2 dragon descendants were already inherently talented, with blood inheritance superior to most species, capable of being leaders in strong wild tribes. After being radiated by the red dragon's blood, their strength got further elevation, and these 2 dragon descendant species now could even challenge a young frost giant on the endless icefield. By dusk, Karon brought the dragon group to land. Though the giant dragon's robust physical strength and abundant energy allowed for prolonged aerial flight, the journey home was long. To maintain sufficient physical strength and combat power for potential battles, the giant dragons needed rest. And even if the giant dragons could fly tirelessly, their dragon descendant beloved lacked such formidable bodies. These dragon descendant monsters, brought from underground dungeons, all survived to the end through combat. To the giant dragons, they were exceptionally useful beloved, and Karon did not intend to abandon these beloved. The dragon group did not choose to rest in the high mountains but landed on a hill in the wilderness. Surrounded by expanses visible to the eye, under the brightening moonlight, the surroundings were fully visible, making it an excellent temporary resting spot. A dozen robust dragon descendants had instinctively placed hunted wild cattle, wild boars, and musk deer before the resting giant dragons. However, only dragon descendant Wolfman Saha and dragon-blooded centaur Karon among the dragon group could approach, as these foods were brought by these two dragon descendants. On one hand, these two dragon descendants were part of the strongest in the monster group, naturally having a relatively higher rank and status. On the other hand, the other dragon descendant monsters like dragon descendant Jackal Wolfman, dragon-born Terror Bear, dragon descendant Half-Beastman, appeared peculiar in the eyes of the giant dragons. These dragon descendants were the first-generation dragon species monsters created by the giant dragons, mostly resembling humanoid dragon race forms, but generally lacked wings and tails. Dragon descendant Wolfman Saha was an exception. Moreover, the first-generation dragon descendants had color matching the dragon scales of the influencing giant dragon. Half of this batch of monsters had vibrant red dragon scales, while others mixed green, white, blue, bright black colors. Not necessarily ugly, but at least viewed as abnormal by the giant dragons. Given the giant dragon's supreme domain aesthetic view, if deemed weird, it likely was truly ugly. "My lord, this is your dinner." Dragon descendant Wolfman and dragon-blooded centaur Karon brought forward a massive earth dragon before the red dragon. After witnessing Karon and the dragon group's power, capable of easily destroying cities, these two dragon descendants were now genuinely loyal. Karon nodded, looking at the 6-meter-long earth dragon before him. This creature, though bearing the dragon name and perhaps a thin trace of dragon blood, appeared as mere beasts in the eyes of the giant dragons. Besides, the meat of earth dragons suited Karon's taste, large-sized with abundant meat, unlike some odd creatures whose size inversely correlates with meat yield. He hollowed out the earth dragon's stomach, removing and cleaning out the intestines. Just as he was about to unleash dragon breath for a long-awaited barbecue dinner, the roaring wind from above caught his attention. A giant dragon flying down from a nearby mountain range, body about 16 meters long. Its wide wings spread 30 meters, with its dragon scales radiating gentle, warm reddish-brown glow. Its head bore a pair of club-like sturdy dragon horns, connected to the cheeks by webbed skin-like structures. The wings appeared as sail-like arrangements, extending to the tail. This was evidently a red copper dragon fond of nesting in warm mountains, belonging to metal dragon species. Red copper dragon Alfred was a young dragon, having nested here for nearly 20 years, intimately familiar with every part of this territory. But today Alfred suddenly sensed multiple dragon presences within his territory and intended to investigate. Unexpectedly, it was led by a red dragon with several young 5-color dragons. That red dragon appeared particularly robust, its bulky body almost larger than Alfred's own. Nevertheless, Alfred was fearless. Even if outmatched, he could escape, and at worst be beaten by these 5-color dragons. Since disputes among giant dragons seldom lead to death, unless during war, Alfred braced for a potential beating. The young giant dragon dove down, agile body hovering in the air, dragon language booming, angrily demanding, "Red dragon, what are you here for? You have crossed the boundary. This place is my territory. I, Alfred, am the rightful lord here. You should respect my will." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 69-25, The True Ruler of the Land of Golden. Chapter 69, Chapter 25, The True Ruler of the Land of Golden. The young dragons all stood up warily and gathered around, while the dragon descendants glared fiercely at the red copper dragon in the sky. In front of the giant dragon that created them, the courage of these dragon descendants always doubled. The female red dragon Kleena even adopted an aggressive stance because the nesting preferences of the red copper dragon often align with those of the red dragon, leading to frequent conflicts between the two. Meetings between red dragons and red copper dragons are usually not pleasant, a prejudice etched in their legacy. Fortunately, these young dragons were greatly influenced by Karon, so they mostly felt that heritage was just heritage, nothing to do with them, thus preventing a fight from breaking out immediately. Karon did not want any trouble right now. Returning to their own territory was the most important thing for them. Thus, he restrained the actions of the dragon group and asked Kleena to relax. The red dragon stood up, showing a willingness to communicate. "You need not harbor hostility against us, my strong and graceful fellow giant dragon. We are merely passing through your territory, resting temporarily, with no designs on your domain." Red copper dragon Alfred looked at the giant dragon before him, so different from other red dragons. Upon closer observation, he realized that this red dragon's eyes bore no trace of chaos caused by the evil dragon blood, instead full of reason and a giant dragon's natural pride. If not for the pure sulphurous aura of a red dragon, he might even think this red dragon was a beautiful and majestic crossbreed of a golden dragon and a red dragon. No, this red dragon looked more aligned with the aesthetic standards of these giant dragons than those golden dragons. The simple, powerful body lines combined with the innate strength of the red dragon made Alfred even feel that if he were a female dragon, he would definitely fall for this red dragon. He even felt a surge of emotion called jealousy. Damn, how can this red dragon be so robustly beautiful? Currently, if Karon abandoned the identity of a red dragon, he would be like a succubus among giant dragons. And in terms of charm assessment, he might far exceed those golden dragons. The widespread of golden dragon lineage was naturally due to their friendliness and strength, but their unrivaled appearance among all giant dragons was also a reason they could easily earn others' trust. However, to be praised as strong by a notoriously arrogant red dragon, to be honest, red copper dragon Alfred felt somewhat elated by the compliment from the red dragon in front of him. Thus, his fury subsided, his long white tusks showing unconsciously in a smile, and his voice became calm. "You seem different from your kin, so I believe what you said, charming, strong red dragon." The vigilant red copper dragon almost misspoke but quickly corrected himself, looking with some envy at the red dragon's unique appearance. "But you cannot pillage those humans living in my territory, they need to entertain me. Without them, I won't hear any interesting stories and jokes." Karon nodded, promising the red copper dragon, "I have no interest in those humans, they're not princesses of any kingdom or anything." "Ha, you're quite amusing." Alfred evidently caught the self-deprecating joke of the red dragon, suddenly developing curiosity about him. He asked, "What is your name, red dragon? I think perhaps having a not-so-evil friend isn't a bad thing." "My name is Karon, Karon Gogomola." Karon bared his white, sinister tusks in a smile to greet the giant dragon in front of him, thinking that making a friend with this giant dragon might be a good choice. "Alfred, fly straight north from here until you see giant dragons soaring in the sky. That will be my territory. If one day you come into my territory, I will surely entertain you well. I very much look forward to that day." Evidently, the evil reputation of the red dragon had not spread here yet. As the young giant dragon Alfred gladly agreed, "There will be such a day, if I get too bored staying here." The young red copper dragon had yet to realize what kind of evil reputation the friend in front of him had in the outside world. When those pieces of information reach him, who knows if the young giant dragon will regret making this friend. However, at this moment, the young red copper dragon reassuredly turned and flew toward his dragon nest. Social interactions between giant dragons are actually quite simplistic, and of course, there's the even simpler root gold coins can buy the friendship of most giant dragons. The young giant dragon soaring in the sky planned to tell this story to his metal dragon friends, his bragging urge growing impatient, intending to recount the event of the red dragon praising him as elegant and strong for 3 days and 3 nights. It's simply said that peculiar beings often meet peculiar beings. Having received recognition from the Lord Giant Dragon of this place, the dragon group rested peacefully here for an entire night, departing once more on their journey home by dawn. In what used to be the ogre camp, now a pioneer camp for adventurers, Rose and Her were relaxing, seated on small wooden stools at the entrance of their shop. The present-day Rose was quite a busy person, and the small restaurant he had opened with his good friend Her had become the most popular eatery in this pioneer camp. Excellent cooking skills and affordable prices kept Rose's little shop busy almost every day. Only in the time span after noon did they have leisurely moments of rest. Rose and Her smiled as they looked at the sun in the sky, the no longer blinding light seemingly brightening the beautiful lives ahead. Her's outstanding hunting skills and proficient handling of prey not only supplied the little eatery with ample meat but also allowed the processed pelts to be sold to traders. As for Rose, he cleverly planted the vegetable and grain seeds he brought in a small garden he cleared at the forest's foot, which helped keep the little shop relatively low in cost. Despite the daily bustle, thanks to Rose's dexterity, looking at the gradually fuller money bags, Rose and Her still believed that the good days were just ahead. The only cost was a small fee to let the dragon's beloveds, who could roam freely in this land, help take care of the garden. Luckily, Rose could brew sweet, delicious fruit wine. The only shortfall was the old man who came to his small eatery every month to dine and drink on credit, though he paid his bill on time each time. Seeing this old man spending money on the ladies who always hid in their wooden cabins, Rose always felt that someday he might never recoup that debt. Rose suddenly felt the sky before him veiled in shadow, an intense spiritual pressure engulfing the entire pioneer camp. The daunting presence the dragon group unintentionally emitted startled him, causing the wine glass in his hand to shatter onto the ground. The whole pioneer camp turned chaotic, as the overwhelming dragon power, swept with fierce winds, arrived, yet no one dared to act. They all stood frozen on the spot. In the sky, the dragon group soared: the robust and fierce red dragon, the sinister black dragon, the devious green dragon, the fierce blue dragon, and the white dragon. To Rose, those powerful yet unfamiliar giant dragons seemed like extremely terrifying evil giant dragons, even making him a bit worried for the White King governing this land. After all, under the White King's rule, humans generally lived in harmony with the dragon's beloveds. With the dragon's beloveds' activity, creatures and beasts in the wilderness and forest dared not approach easily, providing a sufficiently safe environment for the pioneer camp. Roar! The intense dragon roar came from the distant forest. The white dragon, revered as the White King by the pioneer camp, ascended, charging with the blue dragon toward the far-off incoming dragon group like beasts enraged by territorial infringement. It's over. Rose, like everyone else in the camp, closed his eyes, already imagining the fate of the White King being struck down and torn to pieces. Even though the current White King had grown into a 7-meter-long white dragon, well described as a white terrifying giant beast, accompanied by that juvenile blue dragon, Rose still had no confidence in them. But the scenario Rose envisaged did not occur. The giant white dragon, known as the White King by the pioneer camp, and the blue dragon paused before the dragon group from afar. Deeply bowing their noble and proud dragon heads to the red dragon, a gesture of subservience, also in seeking recognition. Perhaps, this was the true ruler of the land of Golden, the king of this wilderness and forest, the master of centaur and other monster tribes. At that moment, everyone in the camp had the same thought. Howl! The resounding dragon chant echoed between heaven and earth. It was the dragon group dancing, jubilant and joyful upon reunion. And in the endless forest, the howls of monsters arose, welcoming the return of their master, back to this land. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 70-26, A minor issue during territory inspection. Chapter 70, Chapter 26, A minor issue during territory inspection. The clamor of the giant dragons did not last long. In fact, for the vast majority of five-color dragons, emotional indifference, selfishness, and inherent greed are their most obvious traits. Although the dragon group has been influenced by Karon, the internal connections within the dragon group are very different from other five-color dragons. To the outside world, however, the giant dragons in the dragon group are still those evil giant dragons with unchangeable nature. Just like White Dragon Gomot, if other five-color dragons were in possession of large territories and became the actual rulers, greed and ambition-driven giant dragons would never easily return the sovereignty of the territory. Even knowing they can't defeat giant dragons like Karon, they would still stubbornly give it a try, only being driven away or forced to join the dragon group after being defeated. But this change is actually a good thing for the dragon group. If five-colored giant dragons could unite like metal dragons, even with their inherently chaotic attributes and carrying the name of evil, they wouldn't be almost universally hunted in all worlds. After all, if they had the tradition of metal dragons where the older ones came when the younger ones were beaten, five-colored giant dragons could do even more ferocious things. Karon was now squatting at the highest point of the Dragon Nest mountain range, watching the young dragons cheering and flying, choosing their nests anew on the mountain range. Having learned from the last lesson, these young dragons decided to rebuild their nests at the mountaintop. That way, even if enemies could penetrate the outer protective ring of the dragon's beloved, these giant dragons could quickly spot them. Although the treasures of these young dragons were looted completely in the past, the freedom of life now is the greatest treasure to them. Moreover, after Gomot's years of leadership, those beloved have accumulated quite a bit of treasure for the giant dragon treasure vault. This was what surprised Karon the most, as White Dragon Gomot actively handed over the ownership of this treasure vault to him, which is so unlike five-color dragons. Karon, all the treasure accumulated over the years has been placed in the cave. It's the dragon group's treasure vault, you should be the one to manage it. The white dragon stood beside Karon. Although Gomot's body developed and grew after the dormancy period, white dragons originally belonged to the smallest dragon species among five-color dragons. Now compared to the red dragon beside him, he was like a slightly thicker hemp stem. "You did very well, my brother," Karon said, looking at the white dragon next to him. The natural indifference in his pupils was also tinted with a layer of warmth. He sniffed and said with some surprise, "Gomot, you smell differently, you've changed somewhat from before." The white dragon opened his mouth to reveal his tusks, which were longer and slender compared to the red dragon's. "Karon, I always remembered your words and followed in your footsteps to become stronger. Moreover, I feel an unprecedented clarity, now I can control my desires instead of letting sheer desire control me. Maybe you'll call me Gomot the Clever in the future." Karon shook his head. The bloodline growth had made it a fiercer head, nearly larger by half a circle than the white dragon's, and said, "I prefer when humans call you White King Gomot, this is the praise and honor you deserve." The white dragon knew Karon was not the kind of narrow-minded giant dragon, at least for the internal dragon group, but Gomot still didn't think he could assume such a title, as he was just a young dragon. In the eyes of giant dragons, whether metal or five-color dragons or other true dragon species, a giant dragon crowned with king must possess strength surpassing other ordinary giant dragons. Thus, the white dragon shook his head, looking at the robust body of the red dragon that made dragons envious, and said, "Only one king can be among the dragon group, and that king can only be you. Karon, if I dare to assume this title, not only would other giant dragons in the group be disgruntled, but even other giant dragons would come to trouble us." After learning from his lesson and his conversation with the mage, Karon thought about gathering those scattered five-colored giant dragons. If these five-colored giant dragons learn to unite, the strength they possess will not only be enough for self-protection but can also establish a strong monster kingdom. By then, a title like White King would be nothing significant. However, the current power of the dragon group is insufficient to achieve this. The most important thing now is to manage the current dragon group territory well, avoiding past mistakes, learning from experience. Yes, we still need to accumulate strength for now. Karon stood up, his broad wings stretched out as he flew downwards. The territory and beloved were still waiting for his inspection. Having left for so long, he should take a good look at what changes have occurred in the territory. The white dragon habitually followed, rising into the air behind the red dragon. Whoosh! The white dragon heard the sound of the wind, turning his head back. The young dragons still selecting nesting locations on the mountaintop had all followed, voluntarily forming the hunting formation they used as juvenile dragons. This time, however, it wasn't for hunting but for following Karon in revisiting the land. These giant dragons are no longer juvenile dragons from the past, having grown into young dragons. The dragon group now represents a considerable force on this land. And as the gradually growing giant dragons fluttered their broad wings, casting vast shadows over the living creatures below, all the animals on this land would know that the former rulers had returned. The grassland remained vast and boundless, lakes were scattered like stars, plants thrived, and animals ran in joy. But when Karon once again approached the great tree that was once Anna's habitat, the female leopard was nowhere to be found. It turns out that the two cubs the leopard Anna once bore have now grown into the top predators in this region, which is not without the help of the leopard borrowing dragon power, but also indicates the twins' strength. Perhaps due to frequent exposure to the aura of giant dragons, these two leopards underwent some degree of mutation. Not only are their physiques larger than the normal peers, but even the pupils of the beasts possess an extra gleaming spirituality. Yet, perhaps because Karon had been away for too long, or maybe because Karon's outward appearance and aura had changed. These two leopards lying and resting under the tree did not frantically flee like other beasts upon seeing the giant dragons arrive, but no longer crawled over to roll around at Karon's feet as before. They just lazily lay under the tree, gazing at these large giant dragons. Karon did not experience any additional emotional fluctuations. Life, death, illness are unavoidable stages for ordinary creatures. He came here only out of habit. He rose into the air again with the dragon group, having found a small issue regarding the protection of the Dragon Nest mountain range during his inspection. This should be promptly resolved. In his current mind, the safety of himself and the dragon group should be prioritized. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 71-27, The Flying Birds in the Sky Are the Eyes of the Dragon Group. Chapter 71, Chapter 27, The Flying Birds in the Sky Are the Eyes of the Dragon Group. The Dragon Nest mountain range has now become a large logging field. Under the leadership of their old chief Bag, those strong dogmen's beloved faithfully carried out the will of their beloved, shifting their activities from wielding pickaxes in dark underground mines to swinging axes. Fortunately, after trading with humans for some time, even though some kobolds still wield stone-carved axes, the majority of the dogmen's beloved have their own iron axes now. Trees, thick or thin, are felled at the roots, trimmed into neat logs, and rolled down the mountain, forming rows at the foot. Every peak where a giant dragon has a nest in the entire Dragon Nest mountain range is being logged by the dragon's beloved, clearing trees from the foot of the mountain to the mountainside. These trees block the view and provide opportunities for those skilled in concealment. Near the foot of the mountain, the forest must also be cleared to create a fire break-like defense line. Logs will be used to build tall watchtowers, each to be manned by loyal beloved sentinels. This task is being conducted by the Centaur tribe with the ogre slaves, while ogre giantess Fafnir remains the leader of the ogre warriors. Though Fafnir is Karon's female slave, the red dragon currently has no intention of seeing her. Under her command, the ogres are quite orderly. As for those green-skinned goblins, it's a relief if they don't create trouble for others. Give them an axe, and they might chop not trees but fellow green-skinned goblins. However, these green-skinned goblins can barely be accepted as log carriers. Though small in stature, they can exert considerable strength under the whips of the centaur warriors. The first-generation dragon descendant monsters are patrolling the entire Dragon Nest mountain range under the leadership of dragon descendant werewolf Saha and dragon-blooded centaur Karon. These dragon descendants, proud of being influenced by the true dragon's bloodline and much stronger than the beloved, carry an especially arrogant attitude. Trees that originally grew too tall would obstruct the vision of the giant dragons and their beloved, hiding dangers that couldn't be detected early and allowing enemies to conceal themselves in the dense forest. It's much better now. A large barren section from the mountainside to the foot, combined with the giant dragon's excellent sight, practically prevents any enemies from openly approaching the Dragon Nest mountain range. Green Dragon Antagena was sprawled listlessly in her dragon nest, mumbling to herself. This dragon nest was carefully chosen by her, with trees growing densely at the mountaintop of moderate height compared to other peaks. The green dragon used her innate talent and magic to make these trees grow into a unified giant tree with interwoven canopies. Although the tree nest isn't tall, it's spacious and comfortable, with fluffy, thick crowns that make the whole nest appear soft. The green dragon loves the feeling of her nest being nestled by green leaves and flowers. Even though lying in her favorite nest, the green dragon was still bothered, her muttering resembling the calls of flying birds and occasionally the clucking of wild pheasants. After a long while, Green Dragon Antagena sighed and lay dejectedly in the nest. Why are there so many types of bird speak, and why is it so difficult to learn? Since Karon mentioned to the dragon group about taming the flying birds in the sky and making them the eyes of the dragon group, this simple task was assigned to Green Dragon Antagena by numerous young dragons. On one hand, the giant dragon's unique throat structure and wide vocal range enable them to learn almost all languages of the world's creatures, only depending on their willingness. On the other hand, among these giant dragons, only the green dragon could slightly get along with animals. After all, there's just one word difference between plants and animals. Moreover, the forest is the green dragon's domain, where these forests often serve as habitats for flying birds. Thus, the green dragon could only fretfully learn the languages of various birds in the forest. Yet previously, she hadn't noticed that the birds in the forest were far from merely dozens to hundreds of species. Given these birds' brain capacities, communicating forcibly with spiritual power without telepathy might just cause them to instantly fall stiffly to the ground. With the typically crude techniques of these giant dragons, such a possibility occupies a significant probability. At one moment, the green dragon suddenly felt that learning bird speak was less taxing than fighting in the gladiatorial arena. Damn, I'm not some wretched bone, Antagena quickly interrupted her thoughts. Regrettably, she doesn't know those druid spells to communicate with animals. If she did, she wouldn't need to learn so much bird speak. Damn, why isn't there anything about this in the giant dragon's heritage? Antagena scratched her head, which felt several circles larger, with her sharp claws like a splendid crown. She suddenly recalled similar words Karon once said, a wise man considering 1,000 times may make a mistake once, and a foolish person pondering many times may succeed once. This made the smart green dragon stand up from her nest, stretch her wings, and take off. She aimed at the den of the dumbest fellow in her memory, White Dragon Kamid, and flew over. Giant dragons greatly value their nests, which are their most important private spaces. Even among familiar kin, the will of other dragons must be respected. Seeing the stone walls already spreading with ice, she wisely refrained from approaching. The green dragon only hovered in front of the entrance to the cave White Dragon Kamid excavated at the mountain's peak. And called out loudly, Kamid, Kamid, come out quickly, I have something to ask you. After a long while, just as Green Dragon Antagena was about to become impatient, a white dragon's head finally popped out from the cave. Yawning lazily, he declared a bit displeased, Antagena, what do you want with me? I was sleeping soundly. As the red dragon stipulated, there must always be at least one giant dragon patrolling the territory of the dragon group in the sky, so these young dragons have been taking shifts to patrol. Having just completed a whole night in the sky, White Dragon Kamid, who had just slipped into rest, was woken by the green dragon, which is why he was slightly discontented. If it were Kleena, the green dragon might have received a beating. Although Kleena seems to get along quite well with the green dragon, the red dragon's volatile temper isn't so easily assuaged when provoked. The green dragon hurriedly explained her predicament, only eliciting a big eye roll from the white dragon. Just this trivial matter? Karon asked us to control the flying birds in the sky as the dragon group size, but didn't expect you to oversee those birds personally. Just find those magical beasts or creatures that can communicate smoothly with the birds, claim them as your beloved. Didn't the raven men who provoked you last time naturally communicate with flying birds? You can go to them. Upon hearing Kamed's words, the green dragon felt a sudden revelation. Is this the occasional wise insight of the dull? The green dragon believed this was the white dragon's extraordinary wisdom, but in fact, White Dragon Kamed merely learned some of Karon's ways of delegating responsibilities from spending more time with him. To the White Dragon, it's best not to think for himself, as being with Karon, he was always the one taking action, a role Kamed had grown accustomed to. That's really a good idea, would you like to come with me to visit the Raven Men tribe? Praising her companion's insight, the Green Dragon wanted to invite the White Dragon to act together. These young dragons, though not yet sexually mature, were already becoming consciously aware of such aspects as they aged. The Green Dragon received favored treatment before other male giant dragons like Rosani and Gomot due to her graceful figure, partially attributable to her inherent knack for persuasion. Thus, she automatically assumed White Dragon Kamed would gladly accompany her to the Raven Men tribe, acting as her enforcer. However, White Dragon Kamed merely shook his head, rejecting the Green Dragon's invitation. Go yourself, Antajena, I still need to sleep. Karon said if you get too tired and don't sleep, your brain will get damaged and you'll become a fool. In Kamed's mind, the Green Dragon was clearly not sweeter than sleep. The rarely refused Green Dragon was dumbfounded, especially as she was turned down by a White Dragon, something that the somewhat proud Green Dragon found hard to accept. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 72-28, The Beasts of the Land Are the Dragon Group's Voice. Chapter 72, Chapter 28, The Beasts of the Land Are the Dragon Group's Voice. The arrival of summer has made the already dense forest even more so, with lush canopies shielding the ground from the blazing sunlight coming down from the sky. Walking in the particularly cool woods requires extra caution, as the piles of dead leaves can easily reveal one's position, turning predators into prey for other, more powerful creatures. Especially for those adventurers, when prepared, even ordinary adventurers can turn the tables on many formidable creatures. But if one accidentally encounters some unexpected, formidable beasts or vicious animals, it is often the ordinary adventurers who find themselves overturned. This group of adventurers is adaptable. To avoid startling their target prey, they make use of hooks crafted from thick ropes, allowing them to move through the tall trees like monkeys agilely leaping through the jungle by swinging from branches. The adventurers skilled in martial arts can be even more agile than those monkeys. These adventurers have set their sights on a demon-patterned tiger living in this forest, a female tiger accompanied by 2 cubs. This demon-patterned tiger naturally belongs to the vicious type, obtaining the ability to become ferocious upon reaching adulthood. The fur of this demon-patterned tiger is not only lavishly beautiful, favored by the nobility, but is also a magical material capable of bearing magic rune powers, useful for mages. Most importantly, demon-patterned tigers are naturally spiritual and wise creatures, some even smarter than a newborn white dragon. If one catches a demon-patterned tiger cub, it can be sold to those nobility and merchants who like to cultivate pets and knights using various magical creatures, which could be quite lucrative. However, experienced adventurers are well aware that the mother tiger nursing her cubs may be extremely dangerous, but what's more frightening is the danger lurking in the shadows. Male demon-patterned tigers often hide in the shadows, keeping an eye on the movements of the female and her cubs. If any other creature dares to intrude near the mother tiger and her cub's habitat, the male demon-patterned tiger will launch a direct attack, killing the intruder rather than just driving it away. The adventurers carefully observed the surroundings, noting that outside the demon-patterned tiger's lair, only the mother tiger lay lazily on the ground. The 2 cubs were playfully biting the mother tiger's ear and tail, without any trace of the male tiger's presence. So, at the adventurer captain's command, several adventurers hidden among the treetops took out specially crafted long blowguns from behind their backs and began applying a generous dose of a special magic potion to the blowgun tips. This magic potion loses its effectiveness quickly upon contact with air, but its effects are potent, with even a small drop capable of stunning the huge herbivorous giant elephants on the plains. This magic potion is quite a financial expenditure for these adventurers, but if they can successfully capture their prey, the cost is but a drop in the bucket. After applying the magic potion, the adventurers silently aimed their blowguns at the unaware mother tiger, and swoosh, a faint sound of the breeze swept by. The mother tiger's ears had just perked up when she was struck. The intelligent mother tiger sensed the magic potion taking effect in her body, and the splendid magic patterned skin on her surface began to glow, with wind element power appearing and spreading over her. Roar! A powerful, penetrating tiger's roar echoed far and wide, startling a flock of flying birds into the air from the forest, but the mother tiger collapsed in a brief instant. The two cubs dashed towards the cave in a panic, but the adventurers didn't pursue them. Instead, they reloaded their blowguns and applied the magic potion once more. Since the mother tiger had sounded the alarm, the male tiger nearby would undoubtedly come over, and they planned to take down the male tiger as well. After all, hidden in the trees, the male tiger wouldn't notice them at first, and would likely check on the mother tiger. At that point, these adventurers could repeat their strategy and easily capture this whole den of demon-patterned tigers. Rustling sounds filled the forest as the male demon-patterned tiger rushed towards them, its padded feet minimizing noise even at full speed. A 5-meter-long male tiger leapt onto the mound above the lair, scanning the surroundings cautiously. Upon not finding any trace of enemies, it didn't immediately check on the fallen mother tiger, but raised its head, letting out a penetrating roar through the mountain forest. Growl! That was a warning signal. The adventurers hidden among the dense tree canopies turned pale, pondering to themselves, could it be that even these beasts have started living in clans now? Or has some change occurred in this forest? But they dared not to easily expose their positions. Under preparation, these ordinary adventurers could easily take down a demon-patterned tiger, but if the opponent is ready, the situation could turn around. They all held their breath, carefully restraining their movements. Soon, an unexpected change occurred that the adventurers couldn't comprehend. Instead of other demon-patterned tigers, it was a group of kobolds and green goblins with whistle arrows and various weapons that came in response to the tiger's roar. This group of kobolds and green-skinned goblins cautiously peered from behind tall trees, and only after seeing no trace of enemies did they angrily rush forward. To the adventurers' surprise, the male demon-patterned tiger did not attack these seemingly weak kobolds and green-skinned goblins, but stood calmly in place. The leading kobold was Bag's nephew, and though kobolds may not value these kinship ties, being a relative of the dogman leader, he could at least serve as the captain of a patrol squad. The kobold captain carefully inspected the fallen mother tiger's marks, and immediately cursed, "Damn it, those humans are the cause. Those humans can't be far away, go find them." The male demon-patterned tiger who had been watching suddenly roared loudly upon hearing the kobold captain's words, the magic patterns on its body glowing as a wind blade sliced through the treetops, cutting off branches. The keenly perceptive and intelligent male demon-patterned tiger had long discovered the humans hidden in the canopy, and now smartly revealed this fact. After all, it was allied as a demon-patterned tiger now, no longer needing to rely solely on its own strength. Wise beasts always knew how to borrow power, especially the vicious ones with greater intelligence. An unfortunate adventurer fell crying from the tree, landing on the thick pile of dead leaves, and was seized by the approaching kobolds. "Damn, you humans are always causing us kobolds trouble," the kobold captain cursed, kicking the adventurers bound on the ground. These adventurers understood the laws of living on this land well, though currently cooperating with the dragon group, the least they wanted was to provoke the beloved ones of the giant dragons. Moreover, with the situation unfolding in Hobbies, the capital of the Gata Empire, the terrifying red giant dragon, embodying legendary significance, had returned from the human empire to rule this land. The adventurers dared not to anger the land's sovereign will, otherwise, not only would they risk their lives, but the entire camp might face extermination. Furthermore, with kobold bows and arrows pointing at them, they dared not to easily resist, and instead jumped down from the canopy one by one, bound tightly. This alert point is under Master Chiron's responsibility. Hopefully, he won't be angry about this. The kobold captain felt anxious too, fearing punishment by the stronger dragon descendants, as adhering to the dragons will meant punishment for any shortcomings. And when the powerful dragon-blooded centaur Karon learned of this news, his reaction mirrored that of the kobold captain. "Damn it, you kobolds are always causing me trouble." Karon was a bit angry, for these vicious animals with adequate wisdom for communication were placed in the forest as spokesmen by the dragons. The flying birds above were the eyes of the dragon group, and the beasts below were their mouths. It was the will of the red giant dragon, commands no dragon descendant could defy. Moreover, these demon-patterned tigers were persuaded by physical means, led by him and other dragon descendants, now nearly snatched by humans. Any breach in this alert zone would be disastrous. Current human camp and giant dragon territory are partners, and since the humans haven't crossed boundaries, they're unaware of recent changes in the dragon group territory. Thus, he couldn't arbitrarily deal with the humans. "I must inform Master Rosani about this matter, ask what Master Rosani wishes, and hope he won't get angry over it," Karon thought to himself. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 73-29, The Volcano is the Red Dragon's Lair. Chapter 73, Chapter 29, The Volcano is the Red Dragon's Lair. Black Dragon Rosani, like Green Dragon Antagena, currently oversees the beasts on land, while the Green Dragon manages the flying birds in the sky. This arrangement is a crucial part of Karon's defense strategy for the dragon nest, yet the cooperation and interactions with humans aren't his responsibility, nor does he care to manage them. In Rosani's view, any creature infringing upon the dragon group's interests should be crushed under the giant dragon's feet, though this might not align with the current objectives of the dragon group since they still need these humans to work for them. Thus, the matter was again pushed to Blue Dragon Das by the Black Dragon. Blue Dragon, apart from Karon, is the most stable dragon in the group, and has been assigned by Karon to handle all matters of cooperation with the Pioneer Camp. Though currently the dragon group and humans in the Pioneer Camp have a cooperative relationship, Karon has mentioned that the specific methods of cooperation need to change, as the dragon group no longer needs to concede interests for development. However, Karon hasn't specified how the cooperation should change, leaving Blue Dragon Das to worry over it, which has caused the Blue Dragon, like the Green Dragon, to frequently scratch their foreheads with their claws these days. If dragons had hair, the Blue Dragon would have lost quite a bit during this period. "Damn," the Blue Dragon habitually scratched its lone horn, expressing dissatisfaction to the dragon-blooded centaur. "Drive these humans back to their camp, and let them know not to hunt the mystical creatures and fierce breeds in the dragon group territory again in the future. Forget it, just adopt human practices and announce the dragon nest's decision in the camp. This time, let it go. Next time, if such a situation arises, directly kill the humans offending the dragon nest, and don't bother asking me again." "Yes, Lord Das." Centaur Karon, feeling quite elated, descended from the Blue Dragon's peak. Since he wasn't punished, he could happily hold a bonfire feast in the Centaur tribe tonight. "Tisk, that Oni from the Centaur tribe seems rather attractive," Karon thought to himself. "But I should still inform Lord Kleena, she currently oversees all the dragon descendants. Although it isn't my turn to be on night watch tonight, if they can't find me when needed, I'll be in big trouble. She isn't exactly a dragon with a gentle temper." All the giant dragons have been assigned tasks by Karon, with White Dragon Gomot currently managing the various beloved clans under the dragon group, just as he did before. Blue Dragon Axi now oversees the dragon group's sky and ground patrol duties. In layman's terms, he's a security planning administrator, and all the dragons must follow his directives. Except for Karon, who, as the leader of the dragon group, naturally enjoys certain privileges, which he accepts without qualms. He certainly harbors no notions of equality. In the societies of both the dragon group and other species, class distinctions persist eternally. As the king of the dragon group, it is only fitting that he enjoys the status befitting his position. Even though he's the group leader now, he doesn't just lounge in the nest, as frequently appearing helps enhance the beloved's heart energy supply to him. In his idle moments, he still stretches his increasingly broad wings, soaring through the skies and overlooking the land below. He immensely enjoys this sensation, not just for the freedom, but also for his power and status. After all, he is an ambitious red dragon, whose will for freedom is inseparable and indistinguishable from the red dragon's blood. At present, Karon is enjoying his personal freedom, having taken over what was once Carlet's nest. For red dragons, volcanoes are the best spots globally for nesting. Whether extinct or intermittently erupting ones, they all become excessively active volcanoes due to the power of red dragons in the end. But Karon doesn't want to wait that long. The reason red dragons love nesting at the rims of volcanoes isn't solely due to their inherent warmth-loving nature, but more importantly, because the abundant fire attribute magic power helps red dragons grow and develop faster. Moreover, red dragons bathing frequently in volcanic magma have extra smooth and fine scales, which is a motivation for these aesthetics-loving giant dragons. Hence, Karon plans to manually dig through the lava conduits of this dormant volcano. He can not only detect and explore the specifics of the volcano's interior, but also possesses ample knowledge about volcanoes in his mind, not merely from dragon heritage but from previous life knowledge as well. The inside of dormant volcanoes mostly consists of lava conduits, which stretch like tree roots deep into the Earth's core. Volcanic eruptions occur when the magma inside the core heats up, expands, and escapes through the volcanic throat, forming active volcanoes. When the lava inside an active volcano and the core lava create a pressure difference due to certain reasons and flow back into the core, it results in the collapse and seal of the volcanic throat, turning an active volcano into a dormant one. Karon knows that if he clears the path for the core lava, the dormant volcano will revive directly. However, Karon needs to manage the process carefully, as turning a dormant volcano into an active one brings both benefits and drawbacks. The benefit is the eruption can carry mineral-rich ash clouds containing up to billions of tons of minerals, making the surrounding areas of volcanoes the most fertile soils on Earth. Volcanic ash can also nurture the survival of fish in nearby rivers, creating a complete ecosystem with bears, birds, foxes, etc., preying on salmon species, which can feed on volcanic ash. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 74-29, The Volcano is the Red Dragon's Lair, Part 2. Chapter 74, Chapter 29, The Volcano is the Red Dragon's Lair, Part 2. It can nourish the land's ecosystem, bringing abundant mineral resources and forming many valuable gemstones, which are favorites of the kobolds and adornments of the giant dragon treasure vault. Moreover, volcanic lava fused with other materials to form pumice-like stones and volcanic ash and cinder are top-quality building filler materials used for constructing houses and paving roads. The benefits are countless, but there's just one drawback: if not managed well, it results in catastrophic outcomes, affecting the entire Dragon Nest mountain range and potentially triggering tsunamis hundreds of miles away. Besides these giant dragons and those sufficiently powerful beings, this place will become extinct, and everything will wither, taking a long time to restore its former vibrant appearance. However, Karon is confident in controlling this extent. After all, he's the red dragon mastering lava and fire and has enhanced senses to assist him, he shouldn't miss. Setting to work right away, the red dragon first digs out the volcanic dome that originally capped the eruption. Though this dome's existence shields the nest from wind and rain, its existence now acts as a limitation. Considering that the volcano's re-eruption path and his ever-growing body might be affected, Karon decides to dismantle the dome piece by piece and pile the rubble on the nearby mountain plain. Dealing with this dome isn't much of an effort with the current strength and physique of the red dragon. These rocks will merge with the erupting debris and lava after the red dragon clears the volcano, continuously piling higher to form a new peak. One can imagine that, influenced by the red dragon's power, the peak will inevitably rise higher, similar to the Mexico Pericudan volcano in Karon's memory, which initially was just a few centimeters wide fissure spewing black smoke. Hours later, the fissure widened to several meters, the eruption becoming progressively vigorous, the accumulating debris and lava at the eruption site forming a conical peak reaching hundreds of meters high. Ordinary volcanoes don't frequently erupt, thus the accumulated height is limited. When activity temporarily ceases, the accumulated crater can be eroded by rainwater and other reasons. But with the presence and influence of the red dragon, if the red dragon desires, the volcano under their power can remain active around the clock. Perhaps as the red dragon's power further grows, the entire mountain range will be continuously elevated by the red dragon's strength until the earth core energy is depleted. Looking at the neatly piled giant stone cubes covering the ground, Karon suddenly has an amusing thought: if he could return to his original world, maybe he could have these dragons try touring construction sites, earning themselves $1,000 within half a day. Not to mention the number of bricks a dragon of such size can carry. Even some cranes aren't as handy as the dragons under his command, carrying heavy loads, yet agile and swift. Perhaps even as delivery flyers, they could enter the ranks of the top-paid jobs. Considering his current dragon group and those beloved creatures, all are quite handy workers. Shaking his head, Karon believes the red dragon's greed for wealth has affected his mind. He dismisses these silly thoughts, jumping down into the cave, starting to work with his muscular forelimbs. According to Karon's sub-brain-accessed knowledge library, which isn't included in Giant Dragon Heritage, volcano formation has two main reasons. One is at the junction between continental plates, due to relative movement between plates, where one plate dives under another. The descending plate's rock melts due to immense pressure forming magma, which rises, some rising to a certain extent stops, others rise to the surface forming volcanoes, accounting for the majority. But in the perception Karon spreads, the volcano beneath him forms for the second reason. That is, radioactive substances inside the earth core decay releasing heat, causing rocks to melt and ascend to the surface forming a volcano, described in this world as excessive elemental magic energy changes leading to the volcano's formation. This is good news for Karon. He just needs to control the scale of lava channels and the intensity of hidden underground energy eruptions to create a continuously erupting controllable volcano. Not only benefiting the territory, but the red dragon can also bathe in the eternally gushing fire, attribute magic power. Karon first opens a passage in the ground which has solidified into basalt and various impurity rocks, leading to layers of lava solidified into root-like pipes. However, he didn't expect there to be some strange creatures living in the passages covered by these rocks and volcanic ash. Inside these passages close to underground solution springs are many peculiar giant tube worms. Differing from their sea counterparts, they resemble worm-like creatures clad in a thin leathery layer. They are enveloped in a special body fluid allowing them to thrive even near heat-emitting solution springs. Karon curiously pokes at such worms with his claw for a while, their movement speed very slow. With such speed, to prey they must employ disguise-like predation methods akin to cannibal flowers or sudden attacks with retractable mouthparts like frogs catching mosquitoes. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 75-29, The Volcano is the Red Dragon's Lair, Part 3. Chapter 75, Chapter 29, The Volcano is the Red Dragon's Lair, Part 3. But these worms grow plump and white in the dark passages, and their oral apparatus lacks retractable function, indicating that they likely feed on volcanic ash or some substances found here. Karon can only marvel at the wonders of nature, as even eating dirt and gnawing on rocks can lead to such white, plump growth. Although the giant dragon's powerful stomach digestion can also survive by eating dirt, its body size certainly won't be as hefty as these worms. It seems that many five-color dragons are inferior to metal dragons, perhaps not only due to their inherently weaker bloodline but also because many five-color dragons during their infancy had to eat dirt to survive without protection. Unlike those metal dragons who were properly nurtured and could thrive under the care of giant dragon guardians. Karon couldn't help but carefully pick up a worm with his claw and put it in his mouth, tasting the flavor of this worm that seems so delicious to the dragon. The surface of this worm's skin is rather chewy, and upon breaking its surface, a taste akin to iced snow lotus water spreads in the mouth. The body fluid of a creature growing in a hot environment is refreshingly cool. He smacked his lips, finding the taste enjoyable. A faint energy surged into the body of the dragon, so he decided to keep these worms as future sweet snacks. To avoid these worms being burned by the magma during the volcanic activation excavation, he deliberately chose a direction with fewer worms to continue digging. During the excavation process, he also discovered some oddly shaped creatures, a type of scale-horned gastropod snail that grows in pits with accumulating groundwater. These pits are close to the radiation range of the underground magma temperature, so the water in the pits can reach nearly 400 degrees, yet it doesn't affect the snail's activity. There were also some bizarre arthropods resembling crickets, which Karon preferred to avoid. After excavating for nearly 5 days, Karon finally reached the underground magma layer. On one hand, he needed to dig out pathways from the hard underground rock layers that would allow the massive body of the red dragon to move freely, to prevent being stifled during a magma eruption. On the other hand, he was constantly using his perception to explore the underground conditions. If the energy surging from the magma layer was too violent and beyond his control, he planned to abandon this idea. Fortunately, the result of the exploration was favorable. This long-dead volcano after years of dormancy had adapted to a stable and deep underground energy. Though surging fire-based magic power was also quite gentle, within the range Karon could control. Now, the red dragon could see steaming hot air emanating from the holes formed by eroded solid rocks, along with a heavy sulfuric stench emitted from the cracks, sometimes accompanied by spurts of magma. This layer of rock blocking the upward rush of magma was extremely sturdy. Even with the red dragon's sharp dragon claw, it took some effort to pare those tiny holes into circular openings several meters in diameter. Even though these long dormant magma had become mild enough, the overwhelming pressure and energy instantly propelled the magma upwards. Karon had already hidden in the prepared lateral passageway, avoiding the impact of this force. Although the magma, to the red dragon, was akin to relatively warm bath water, the red dragon had no intention of resisting this force head-on. Guided by the red dragon's power, the magma, accompanied by high heat and intense sulfuric smell, along with some buried subterranean substances, surged through the passage. The long lava tunnel was swiftly filled with rushing magma and flames, with some precious minerals deposited within the magma ascending along with the erupting magma. The ascending momentum gradually waned upon reaching the volcano's vent, and the accumulating magma inside the large crater began gathering like a reservoir with connected pipes. A grey smoke cloud started to spread over the exterior of the volcano's vent. The horizontal passage cave where Karon was also became filled with the ascending magma, yet to the red dragon, these high-temperature corroding magma were akin to a beneficial buff, provided a warmth and comfort akin to being enveloped in a maternal womb. This sensation felt more relaxing than any massage spa, akin to the relaxation after lying on a bed following a long day. Karon even contemplated sleeping here for a while. The hibernation mechanism within the red dragon was being triggered, arousing a need for an additional sleep and rejuvenation. If it weren't for the pungent smell lingering underground that made the red dragon sneeze several times, he might have settled down for a proper sleep here. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 76-30, The Molten River is a Red Dragon's Paradise. Chapter 76, Chapter 30, The Molten River is a Red Dragon's Paradise. In the end, Karon still suppressed this incredibly alluring idea that was so attractive to him. He diligently used his dragon claw to lift the eyelids that seemed to have developed their own will and wanted to close. Then he shook his head to clear his mind, causing a ripple in the lava-filled river. He emerged from the temporary cave and swam upwards through the excavated passage. The strong body of a giant dragon allows them to survive in all kinds of environments, and a red dragon is especially at ease in a lava river, swimming through it faster than any fish in the sea. He even took the time during his swim upward to find several rare minerals and some precious gemstones born in the volcanic magma. He swallowed these gemstones into the special storage stomach unique to the giant dragons, and then, propelled by the upward spraying lava stream, Karon quickly swam out of the long lava tunnel, emerging at the mouth of the cave that used to be a volcanic basin. The once dry basin, after accumulating for a period of time, was now filled with enough magma to cover the lower limbs of the red dragon. He paddled a few leisurely strokes in the magma lake, sending countless waves of heat rolling, then flew toward the edge of the basin. Although Karon deliberately controlled the reactivation of the dormant volcano to prevent major disturbances, the changes here still alarmed other young giant dragons. The thick volcanic ash clouds, that erupted along with the flowing lava had already covered the peak of this mountain, spreading with the wind in the sky. Much of the volcanic ash fell, painting the nearby mountains and the plains at the foot of the mountains in a layer of grey, frightening some creatures into a desperate escape across the plains. Fortunately, the forest near the foot of the mountain had been preemptively cleared, creating a buffer zone, otherwise, this could have sparked a wildfire. Two blue dragons, Das and Axi, were flying in the sky. The blue dragons who commanded Storm and Thunderbolt worked hard to disperse the gathering grey volcanic ash clouds. They drove these volcanic clouds higher into the sky, trying to disperse them as much as possible to lessen the impact of the volcanic ash clouds on this land. This disturbance not only alarmed the young giant dragons, but their dragon-beloved ones were watching from the foot of the mountain as well. These dragons' beloved ones understood quite well why the volcano had changed. It was only the power of the red dragon that could create such a commotion. However, although they were also curious, no other creatures were allowed to approach the top of the mountain which belonged to the dragon group. Only when called upon could even those loyal dragons' beloved ones step foot there. The other young giant dragons all stood at a distance, watching from the mountain top. After confirming that the changes were instigated by the red dragon, they stayed away from the steaming, sulfur-scented volcano crater. Though these young giant dragons could also survive at the volcano crater, they didn't enjoy the scent of sulfur like the red dragon did. Only the female red dragon Kleena happily approached, gazing longingly at the ever-growing and rising magma lake. "Karon, your nest looks so comfortable. Can I come in and have a look? Perhaps we could share the same nest like we did in our hatchling days." "Don't worry, I promise I won't disturb you." Karon found it amusing to see the consistently irritable young female dragon now putting on such a fawning look. The red dragon, who used to have an imposing presence second only to the first and third ranks, the red dragon of Tiamat, now looked like a little dog with its tail wagging, trying to plead with eyes naturally lacking dragon-like coldness, appearing particularly ridiculous. But how could he allow another dragon to sleep beside him? Karon did not like other creatures coming near him while he slept, as it made him feel insecure. He knew how alluring a magma lake was to a red dragon, second only to treasures. But to Karon, a nest was an extremely private space. He would rather share his treasures with the dragon group than allow even a dragon to touch his dragon nest. So, even though Kleena's body had reached 9 meters after being baptized by the blood of ancestral return, Karon refused the small female dragon who seemed especially fawning at the moment. But over the days with ample food and energy replenishment, Karon's body had reached 12 meters. His particularly sturdy body compared with Kleena's streamlined physique made the female red dragon genuinely just a small female dragon. "Kleena, you need to know that asking a giant dragon to share its nest means challenging that dragon. Are you saying you've grown so bold as to challenge my power now?" Karon skillfully rose using his hind limbs, often used and particularly well developed. His wide wingspan extended over 20 meters. Even if Karon's expression on his spiky-cheeked face bore no trace of intimidation, his massive size and extended movement still carried an intimidating aura. "Kleena, of course, did not want to challenge the red dragon in front of her. It was just that the red dragon's greed for a very suitable nest made her want to give it a try. She retracted her long dragon neck slightly. But I'm your sister, Karon. At least when you're not in the nest, I can come here to enjoy myself, right? Oh, the five-colored giant dragon plays the kinship card. Karon looked at the young female dragon with some surprise, though he saw it as a positive change. He didn't want to tangle with Kleena any longer. Gently, using his broader and thicker than usual wing to push the female dragon in front away, he said in a deep voice, "Work hard, Kleena. Take care of those newly born dragon descendants for me. Perhaps one day I'll help you draw magma from underground, granting you a red dragon nest of your own." The female red dragon was coaxed away by just a few words from Karon. He was about to fly off to forage and patrol his territory when Blue Dragon Das, who was dispelling volcanic ash clouds in the sky, landed, folding its wings as it walked over, clearly having something to say. Karon had no choice but to stop and stand still. "Das, do you also have something to discuss with me?" Blue Dragon Das stopped in front of Karon, with some clear scratch marks on its forehead, indicating that in these days, the blue dragon had been somewhat troubled by learning to manage the territory's logistics. Das habitually reached out with a dragon claw to scratch his horn, sighing. He said, "Karon, according to your idea, many of the powerful, ferocious carnivorous species on the grassland and forest have also become the throats of the dragon group, which means a lot of food is consumed in the territory. Additionally, the current dragon group comprises young dragons who need large amounts of food, and those dragons' beloved ones also need their food supply ensured. Currently, the food resources in the territory have begun to fail to bear the consumption of the dragon group, and excessive hunting of animals on the plains will drive them to other places. In fact, in any place, it's rare to see other types of carnivorous animals in a territory claimed by some carnivores. Previously, the dragon group's territory also often had these giant dragons hunting those powerful carnivorous ferocious species because having too many carnivorous animals gather in one area can severely damage the ecological environment. Food wouldn't be adequately supplied as, for carnivores, their targets are usually herbivorous animals, and these animals need time to grow." Karon nodded. Once back on this land, he had been busy constructing a defense system and reorganizing his nest, intending to turn his nest into an impregnable fortress, which had led him to overlook this issue. "So what's your plan, Das? I'd like to hear your thoughts." This problem before Karon was minor, yet he didn't want to directly propose a solution. He hoped that the giant dragons in the dragon group would also mature, so they could manage things independently in the future. As the master of the dragon group, the king of this land of gold, his approach was completely different from that of the former emperor of the Gata Empire, Karol Caesar II. The emperor of the Gata Empire, Karol Caesar II, was extremely controlling, liked to keep all the power firmly in his hand, controlling others. He wouldn't easily delegate power to his subordinates, which heavily oppressed the imperial citizens, a personal trait of his. But Karon preferred to control himself. He accepted and welcomed all upcoming challenges, not even concerned with the division of power. Because in his view, as long as he could remain powerful, he could easily suppress the dragon group and the beloved, and before such immense power, everything could potentially be overturned. And if there's no power, any treasured position would just be a castle in the air, perhaps also due to another crucial reason: he was somewhat lazy. Source: webnovel.com. Updated by novlove.com. Chapter 77-31, The Blue Dragon's Thoughts. Chapter 77, Chapter 31, The Blue Dragon's Thoughts. Maybe it's time for us to expand the territory. We can first expand towards the grasslands, where many beasts and creatures live. As long as there is enough vast territory space, it can support the consumption of the dragon group in a relatively restrained manner. Blue Dragon Das looked into Karon's eyes, and continued after receiving an approving gaze, "Perhaps we can also learn from those humans, First establish a stable food planting base in the forest. Let those dragon descendants and centaurs leave fixed personnel on duty, and the rest of the members can go into the forest to open up land. Once these fertile soils are opened up into land that can be planted, in a few years it can bring us a considerable harvest, and the food planted can supply the clan of the dragon group, and the giant dragon can also occasionally change its taste. This is a good idea, Das, your ideas are correct. Karon no longer maintained the previous intimidating manner towards Kleena, and instead squat down on the ground, relaxing his posture. In fact, Karon's plan and Blue Dragon's idea aren't much different, perhaps just a bit more specific. However, Karon still encouraged Blue Dragon Das to continue speaking. Having one's own independent thinking ability is a necessary condition for every dragon to grow to a point where they can stand alone. Continue speaking. What other ideas do you have? Karon nodded, signaling Blue Dragon Das to continue. The current clan members of the dragon group are all some fools. Other than fighting, they only know how to hunt and mine. There is no talent in terms of food cultivation, so we should introduce some humans and food seeds, strengthen cooperation with that pioneer camp. We can purchase serfs and slaves like those human nobility. In the eyes of nobility these people are just lower class. As long as the dragon group can offer some benefits, they will definitely be happy to make this deal. Also those prisoners locked in the jail, although many of them are scumbags, once here they are a useful labor force. It must be said, given the advanced wisdom giant dragons are born with, if these giant dragons are willing to use their well-developed brains to think, they are extremely smart. Especially after Karon generously delegated authority, the initiative of these giant dragons has greatly increased. Perhaps these things also belong to a rather interesting territory development game for the giant dragons. It's important to know that most of these giant dragons in non-essential times don't actually like staying in caves sleeping, they prefer playing intellectual games, and quite a few giant dragons have hyperactivity disorder. Otherwise, when still in the hatchling period, Karon's invention of giant dragon sports wouldn't have been so enthusiastically loved by these giant dragons. If it weren't for those 5-colored dragons' safety in travel not being sufficiently guaranteed before they mature, otherwise the 5-colored giant dragons would have gone around causing havoc long ago. Karon is very satisfied that Blue Dragon Das has now learned to think primarily from the perspective of territory interests. If following the mindset of those 5-colored evil dragons, they would only try their best to squeeze those humans' pioneer camp, not use the word cooperation. This makes him feel more strongly about cultivating Blue Dragon Das as an internal affairs director dragon talent for the giant dragon territory, so even though he still has many details to help Blue Dragon Das supplement. For example, having those nobility also looting the villages gathered on the wild lands for trading. These villages far from towns not only can't bring much tax revenue to those nobility, but oftentimes require the lord to send a military force to help drive away goblin jackal wolfman and other monsters that invade. Those noble lords presumably would be happy to use these people to exchange for fragrant gold coins. If it wasn't that the dragon group territory is too far from those human villages, land travel is also unsafe, requiring transportation by ship. Karon estimated he would have just directly let his beloved abduct those populations to their territory. After all, the more the population, not only can they help develop the territory still belonging to the wild lands, they can also provide Karon with power of heart energy once properly settled. For Karon, the more beloved and subjects under rule, the faster his power grows. Karon also would not go on adventures to gain more power of heart energy. That would be losing the big for the small. He should now sincerely lie low, expand steadily, and build his territory into an iron barrel. Because the strength of giant dragons not only lies in their own power, those powerful monster clans are also a kind of power. Some monster kingdoms created by adult evil dragons can even directly confront those prosperous human empires. However, Karon is not in a hurry. Until future growth makes him stronger, it will naturally be easier to expand the territory. At that time he will also obtain more heart energy, then use heart energy to strengthen, his power will rise another level. But these details during Blue Dragon DOS's contact with those profit-driven greedy nobles will also be supplemented. Those nobles are much more professional in seeking profit than Karon. DOS even needs to be careful not to be tricked by those nobles. Moreover, details discovered by oneself leave a far deeper impression than those taught by others. Blue Dragon DOS's thinking will presumably become more comprehensive in the future. Thus the Red Dragon contentedly reached out his muscular sharp claws and patted Blue Dragon's shoulder, saying, "Your ideas are very good, DOS, go ahead without hesitation. Behind everything stands the Dragon Group. For the sake of the Dragon Group's interests, my brother, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everything is on me, I will support you." After saying this, Red Dragon dashed up to fly towards the distant grasslands. He now needs to find food. Leaving Blue Dragon DOS standing there alone, instinctively scratching the robust horn on his head. Actually, Blue Dragon DOS currently isn't very enthusiastic about the desire for power. He more desires to stay in his favorite lair doing what he enjoys, like the Red Dragon. But the matters of the giant dragon territory always need someone to do. Blue Dragon DOS is one of the few dragons in the dragon group born with strong responsibility. After all, the blue dragon he belongs to is the most social among the five-colored dragon species. The idea of taking care of family interests is deeply rooted in his dragon legacy. Blue Dragon DOS sighed troubled, seeing Blue Dragon Axie still hovering in the sky. His eyes rolled, a thought quietly formed in his mind. So DOS spread his wings and flew into the sky, approaching Axie, shouting to the young Blue Dragon, "Axie, Karon said you need to help me do some things." Blue Dragon Axie looked at the young Blue Dragon suspiciously. "What do you need help with? Why didn't Karon tell me?" The blue color on DOS's cheeks showed no sign. He calmly replied, "Karon is busy filling his belly, besides it's just some small things. Axie, you shouldn't refuse to help me this favor." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 78-32, Karon's Magic. Chapter 78, Chapter 32, Karon's Magic. Karon's body is now extremely massive, with wide wings stretching over 20 meters. Some low castles built by human nobility are only about this height. When he soared high above the sky, it was as if a castle was flying. Due to the unique structure of his wings and body, different from ordinary giant dragons, his flying speed far surpassed that of other dragons. When he flew at full speed, he could even break the sound barrier. The gusts inadvertently stirred by his wings in flight could blow over small, weak creatures like green-skinned goblins and kobolds. However, full speed wasn't necessary for hunting, as it consumed too much physical strength and magic power. Karon would simply glide leisurely at high altitudes, carefully searching for the prey he needed. Those intelligent and communicative ferocious species were ignored by Karon. Although these creatures were strong and provided a lot of meat, they had already been incorporated into the defense system of the dragon nest and were considered allies. Soon, he found his target, a lone male plains elephant. This male elephant was over 7 meters long, with a broken ivory stained yellow, and its body appeared somewhat unsteady. It was clearly a desolate loser from the summer competition for mating and leadership rights with other male elephants. This creature grew with difficulty, requiring large amounts of grass to grow just a little meat. If it weren't for the fact that their numbers were too few to sustain the ecological balance of their territory, they would have long been hunted to extinction by these giant dragons. However, this solitary male elephant was not within Karon's protective range. Although it had a massive size, strength, and long ivory, if it were alone, it would be preyed upon by other carnivorous ferocious species on the plains. Rather than letting it become food for other beasts, it was better to fill the belly of a giant dragon. Karon skillfully maneuvered in the sky, diving down like an eagle pouncing on its prey, with sharp claws piercing deeply into the body of the male elephant, which hadn't yet realized the danger, as it was using its trunk to curl up food. Although the massive elephant's weight was measured in tons, the red dragon's strength lifted it with ease. The dragon's powerful foreclaws pierced through the giant elephant's spine like iron hooks, lifting it like an eagle catching a rabbit. and flew towards his nest. Although not many creatures on the plains threatened this red dragon, he had become particularly cautious. He wouldn't eat without protection in the wild but would bring his food back to the nest to enjoy slowly. With a bang, the heavy prey was thrown onto a rock beside the volcano's crater by Karon, and he began to enjoy his dinner. After replenishing himself with enough food, Karon jumped into the magma lake, almost filling the entire volcanic basin. The magma began to flow out of the basin through relatively low terrain. Fortunately, these magmas soon solidified into blocks for reasons like mixing with sand and soil and air drying. Over time, this solidified magma would become part of the mountain's rocks. Karon first took a delightful swim in the scorching magma lake to cleanse his body of occasional bloodstains from prey and scale dust. Then he stopped, preparing to cast a protective magic over his nest, a legacy spell awakened during his transformation from a juvenile dragon to a young dragon. This magic was called Awake Dream Alike, forming a perimeter of a full-range protective shield, a vigilant magic. Though this magic wasn't destructive, it was particularly important for a giant dragon. Because under the barrier and vigilance of this magic, any creature, including Star Realm creatures and ether creatures entering its perimeter, would be detected, awakening the dragon's active perception. This magic was more crucial than other offensive spells for a giant dragon because every time they transitioned to the next age, bloodlines further growing, they needed to enter long periods of sleep. The stronger the dragon, the longer the sleep. Even adult dragons and legendary dragons could accidentally get killed by those who sought to slay them during their sleep, with numerous examples in Karon's inherited memories. This talent spell emerging from bloodline growth seemed like a lottery to Karon, but fortunately, he drew this highly useful magic. However, this magic required the dragon's magic power for sustained energy. Initially, it was cast on the dragon itself. But Karon planned to use the abundant magic in the volcanic magma lake as the energy node for this magic, casting it over the entire volcanic basin, encompassing Karon's nest and the entire mountain top. This way, Karon would have an additional layer of security while sleeping in the magma lake. As a spell awakened from the giant dragon's bloodline, its casting differed from typical magic. The red dragon only needed to use his will to make the magic power within his body resonate with the magic seeds in his bloodline. A faint, invisible ripple rose from beneath the red dragon's feet, spreading in all directions, enveloping the entire volcanic magma lake like a dome. This spell is extremely concealed, making it difficult for any creatures other than Karon to detect. Even those masters skilled in stealth would find it hard to discover the subtle traces of it without prior knowledge. Karon dug out a wide downward-facing cave on the higher side wall of the volcanic basin, which would be the cave where he would store his treasures. The high threshold blocked the flowing magma, but immediately a passage led straight down, functioning as a natural trap. Entering the red dragon's lair without knowledge would result in falling into the deep caves. If a fortunate adventurer somehow reached here, they might still fall prey to this simple trap out of carelessness. After excavating a nearly 100-meter-long downward path, Karon avoided the lava channels spewing magma, and dug a spacious cave into the mountainside. This cave, due to its proximity to the lava channels radiating high temperatures, was excessively dry. Karon used his innate earth-controlling ability to properly fortify the cave, reinforcing its stone walls to a degree even his dragon claws could not easily damage. Then he regurgitated the rare ores and various gemstones stored in his stomach. Among them was a fire attribute magic gemstone, as large as a fist and as clear as crimson blood, a splendid find Karon had discovered underground. Finally, Karon invoked magic power through dragon language, casting a spell over these treasures. Treasure Guard, a spell nearly all giant dragons must learn. Under the effect of this magic, if anyone tries to take even a tiny item from the treasures without Karon's permission, they would feel nauseous and vomit. To avoid vomiting, one must put the treasure down, otherwise, the effect will intensify, eventually becoming too overwhelming to carry. Of course, if someone's strength surpassed Karon's, they could find a way to avoid this effect. After completing these protective measures, Karon confidently crawled up the passage and re-entered the magma lake, continuously belching sulfide fumes and flames. The abundant fire attribute magic power surged into the red dragon's body, inducing a drowsiness in his spirit. So he closed his eyes, his entire body sinking into the magma lake to settle in for a well-deserved rest. The vast, tumultuous fire elemental magic power that overwhelmed other creatures and even other giant dragons cosset the peacefully sleeping red dragon, cocooning him like an embryo being nurtured. The energies, so turbulent to the outside world, were subdued beneath the red dragon's body, transforming into a gentle stream of power that began to seep through every scale and inch of skin. The red dragon's crimson scales shimmered golden under the ample energy, becoming even more lustrous, with a faint glow of firelight rising. Bathed in this glow, the crimson scales were gradually deepening in color. Other magic intermingled with the fire attribute magic was also repelled by the red dragon's fiery aura, compressed in the churning magma lake, gradually condensing under the intense pressure of the fire attribute magic. Small crystals began to float within the restless magma lake over time, emitting a strange radiance, resembling precious gemstones. However, even the world's most precious gemstones couldn't compare to these crystals, as they were pure magic crystals formed from other types of magic species under immense pressure. These are what are considered extremely precious magic gemstones even in the eyes of mages, not only providing for a mage's cultivation needs but also serving as essential materials for many magic arrays, especially high-tier skills that particularly require such gems filled with pure magic. Only some earth attribute and metal attribute magic could approach the red dragon's body amidst such abundant fire elements and were absorbed by the slumbering red dragon. This stemmed from the awakening of the red dragon's natural talent as the king of earth and metal, instinctively absorbing the necessary elemental magic power for growth. The red dragon's body, floating in the magma lake, slowly grew as it absorbed immense elemental magic power, with magic amassing around it like a black hole, centering around the red dragon. This began forming an elemental storm in the magma lake centered on the red dragon. Initially just like a gentle breeze agitating the splashing magma, over time, the heavy lava and impurities in the magma began to swirl slowly as if stirred by a slow-moving vortex. Influenced by the red dragon's power, countless rising magma streams in the underground lava channels overflowed, spewing from the swirling vortex, turning the entire volcanic crater into an extremely dangerous forbidden zone. Excessive magma hastened the overflow from the magma lake, and the flowing lava filled with heat and sulfur began to spread down from the mountaintop. The steaming hot winds and sulfur fumes gradually enveloped the entire mountain. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com.